So why the hell wasn't Bonnie Bennett invited to your ball? Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to another video here on my channel. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy Valentine's Day. Given that we are right in the middle of Black History Month and Women's History Month is right around the corner, I felt like there was no other option for this week's deep dive than the incredible Bennett family. I'm ready to go, okay? I've got my Grams approved cardigan, I've got Miss Cuddles on my shirt, I'm a little extra sparkly because we're gonna be talking about magic. Like, the vibes are good. That being said, as much as I'm gonna gush about these amazing, incredible, talented, powerful ladies, we're also gonna be getting into the bad stuff, and there is just an infuriating level of bad stuff, okay? And I don't even wanna like laugh it off because it's not funny. At the end of the day, like it's really deeply not funny. I touched on this when I did my character ranking video, you know? Bonnie's my favorite of the girls. Watching the show and loving Bonnie is like, it's setting yourself up to get hurt. The whole time, bad things happen and you just have to like roll with it and hope for the best, and the best never comes. So I need you to know that as we embark on this journey together, because I'm gonna tell you so much about all these people and none of it's gonna end well. Given that these guys are one of our biggest families on the show and the lore of their family literally, like quite literally, ties almost all of the lore for the rest of the families together with a bow. Like the Bennett women put the bow on the rest of the show. You would think we would know everything about them. You would think I would be able to just like open a grimoire and be like, here's the whole history. Let me lay it out for you. Babes, it's like piecing together scraps. I hate to tell you this, but my script today is about 1/3 of the size as my script for the Parker family video. And that is not for lack of trying. Like, I have spent the last week just like diving in and looking for as much information as I can find. The wiki pages for these guys, just non-existent. It's almost just like made worse by the fact that Bonnie herself knows next to nothing about the Bennetts, because half of her character development is the fact that her parents just didn't raise her to be a witch. So she gets everything dumped on her right when it's dumped on us, right? So can't even lean on her for help because she doesn't know anything either. Plan for today's video is just to go Bennett by Bennett. I'm gonna give you information about each one of them. We're gonna go timeline order, so you'll meet the oldest first. I'm just gonna info dump all the things I can possibly tell you about them. We're gonna talk about favorite scenes, missed opportunities. Just gonna get into it. It's gonna be so fun. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. This whole unpacking TVD thing seems to be like a trend we're gonna do on this channel for a little while. Already have the next topic and I'm really excited about it. Recaps aren't going anywhere, but I'm having a lot of fun with these style videos, so. One of the biggest and most obvious problems for Bonnie as a character and the other Bennetts as a whole, and the way that they were written and handled on the show, is that the writers rely on them and use them to fill the magical Negro trope again and again and again. This trope refers to a Black character that's utilized in fiction, whether that's TV, movies, books, to like prop up usually the white protagonist in the story. This can refer to like actual magic or like shared wisdom and mysterious insight that they have and the white protagonist desperately needs to go off into the sunset and achieve their goals. Gross bonus points if they end up like helping the white protagonist grow and change in a way that they will never be allowed to do in the narrative because they're just there for emotional support. This has always been a way for white creatives to kind of put a person of color into their story and be like, see, I'm honoring them. I'm giving them a part. I'm making them a part of the narrative. They're so important, without actually developing them or giving them anything to do outside of like being helpful. You don't have to build their place in the world, you just have to give them a spot in the main protagonist's life, and then suddenly representation. That's just not how it works. This is a quote by film critic Rita Kempley, and it reads, It isn't that the actors or the roles aren't likable, valuable, or redemptive, but they are without interior lives. For the most part, they materialize only to rescue the better drawn white characters. So again, there's no complexities to these people. We don't have to care about them past the scene where they do what needs to be done, and then we can sort of be like, oh yeah, they were important, they really helped out, without knowing anything about them. In the case of the Bennett witches, we see them so often throw themselves in front of danger, sacrificing their health, their happiness, literally their lives, over and over again so that the rest of the cast can succeed. It's so disappointing because they set up this amazing family of color that goes back like thousands of years, right? Like as the show goes on, the lore just keeps getting wilder for them, and they could have developed this lore and made it really rich and amazing and given Bonnie a backstory that befits her character. The fact that she's, you know, one of the main trio, like her lore should matter. But at the end of the day, they really gave us next to nothing. I feel like this is really apparent with Bonnie because, like I said, she's part of the main trio. Ayana, Caroline, and Bonnie are our main girls from season 1 to season 8. And she is my favorite female character in the show. I can tell you so many little details about Ayana and Caroline. I know like nothing about Bonnie. There's no extra details to spare with you. I don't know what she enjoyed studying in school. I don't know what her hobbies were outside of being a cheerleader like the other two. There's just nothing there for me to give you. Bonnie herself also falls straight into the black best friend trope because from the very beginning of the show, we're set up and introduced to her as being Elena's best friend. Now again, there's nothing wrong with Bonnie being black and Elena's best friend, or Bonnie being black and a witch. The problems come from those two things so often being all she is. We never get to know her truly on her own, the way that we do Ayana and Caroline. So much of Bonnie's storylines are wrapped up in her helping the others or doing something to help them. There's never just storylines that are her growing for herself. It's always at the expense of everybody else. Now look, given that I'm clearly a white creator, I've linked a couple videos down below from creators of color that I really think you guys should check out if you enjoy this topic and kind of deep diving on Bonnie, why she deserved more, why we all wish she had more from people with a shared experience. Like if you've watched the show and never considered before that what happens to Bonnie is batshit insane, check out those videos. I'm begging you. This is a really important conversation and I'd love for us to keep having it because my girl deserves respect and let's all start giving it to her. Listen, it pains me to say it. I don't like Qetsiyah. I don't like her, y'all. I don't like her. It disappoints me so heavily because she's our oldest Bennett. She is like, as far as we know, the original Bennett witch, okay? She is the one that everybody descends from. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't even have Bonnie. I wouldn't even be making this video. But oh my God, when I tell you she pisses me off, I can't even apologize to you about it because I know I made a character ranking video. I know what I said about her. You guys know what I said about her. Like, it's out there. You can find it. She just activates something in me that makes me want to crawl out of my skin. I don't know what it is. It's like she triggers every possible button that could be triggered on me. And it just makes me like, she just bothers me, okay? If she's on my screen, I'm not having a good time. She describes herself at one point by saying, I have trust issues. I'm controlling. I'm paranoid and a little crazy. So like, on paper, I should love her. The only thing I can think is that so much of what's going on with her boils down to like really petty boyfriend drama. And so maybe that's what bothers me about it because again, like what happens to her is awful, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking like centuries. And maybe that's why it bothers me because I'm like, you're the oldest Bennett. And your big thing is you're mad at a guy? Okay, which now that I'm saying it out loud, my next note in here was, I do think it's interesting that she exemplifies and foreshadows personality traits in Bonnie. So I guess that just didn't fully click as I was writing it before. Because she is painfully loyal to a fault. And then at the same time, capable of being shockingly vindictive when pushed to her limits. Bonnie herself is also like, damn, she sounds like a badass when she like initially gets told the story about Qetsiyah and Silas and Amara from Shane. And then very quickly is like, oh, never mind, she's a terrible person, because Shane's like kind of lying to her about the story initially and making it sound better than it is. And then when Bonnie realizes like what Qetsiyah is really up to, she's like, oh, never mind. Oops, I had a migraine yesterday and never should have started filming, so day 2. Let's just go all the way back to the beginning and talk about why Qetsiyah ended up the way she ended up. So ancient Greece, we're in the traveler community. These guys are like our original witches. It's like the beginning stages of modern day craft. This is where we started. So we've got Qetsiyah, she's a young traveler witch, and she's in love with Silas, another young traveler witch. They're happy, they're like a power couple, very intelligent. He tells her he wants to be with her forever, so he has her whip up an immortality potion so that they can be together forever and they never have to die and be apart. She makes them a beautiful garden for their wedding, like literally spells a whole garden into existence so that they're getting married in like a new beautiful location. While she's there prepping everything, it just starts to die because this man decided it would be a great idea to fall in love with her handmaid and instead lie to her about the immortality potion and then go drink it with Amara on their wedding day. So yeah, as you can expect, Qetsiyah doesn't handle that well. So she brutally murders Amara and then comes out of the tent when Silas comes home holding Amara's heart in her hand and is like, sorry. Just kidding though. She didn't actually kill her. No, worse. She just like entombed her so that Silas could never get to her. That was her original plan, was like, I'm gonna make him human again and then we'll leave Amara immortal and they'll never be together. She initially like tries to forgive him and is like, you made a mistake, all right? Take the cure that I made, become mortal again, and that way when we die, we'll be together forever, but you're never seeing Amara again. That's over. Silas is like, no, babe, I don't want to be with you. That's not going to happen. And so she desiccates and entombs him as well with the cure. So she puts him in a cave in what's going to become Nova Scotia, and we'll get to that in 2011. Locks him up there with the cure so that he can just take it. If he'll just take the damn cure, then he'll die and they can be together. And then, just because she's really thought of everything, right? When she makes her like purgatory world to trap her and Silas in for all of eternity, she uses Amara to bind the spell so that there's no way that their souls will ever overlap again. So even if they do find a way at some point for Amara to die, Silas and her can never be reunited and he'll just be stuck with Qetsiyah forever. He's nothing if not stubborn, so when we get to that cave in Nova Scotia, he is still desiccated, holding the cure in his hands in a little box. Qetsiyah ends up getting punished for the whole immortality spell thing because that's against nature's balance, so that was never supposed to happen. She goes to the purgatory first, and that purgatory that she creates ends up becoming the other side. So once we get to 2011 and we find out about it, we know that for centuries, she's basically been like catch-alling supernaturals because she's trying to catch Silas. And each time one of them dies, they have to pass through Amara. So centuries of feeling death after death after death. As you can imagine, she's not doing too great when we finally see her again. Just to add insult to injury to Qetsiyah as well, while she was on the other side waiting for Silas to die, because nature and the spirits always want to balance, Amara and Silas being made immortal like triggers the doppelganger curse into existence. So little doppelganger couples keep popping up and Qetsiyah just has to watch them fall in love and be doomed and fall in love and be doomed over and over and over again, ending with 2011 when we've got what would be Tom and Elena, but Stefan and Elena. Side note, one of you guys suggested the doppelganger lore for one of these videos and it's on the list, so hopefully that'll be coming. So that's her backstory, and then we get to 2011 where she tricks Bonnie into like letting the other side come down. She ends up making Bonnie the anchor so that Bonnie can come home, but in doing that subjects Bonnie to the pain of being the anchor, so now she's the one that has to accept the spirits coming over to the other side. And once Qetsiyah comes back to life, all she's focused on, like I said, is getting revenge on Silas because he's come back at that point. He's kind of terrorizing Bonnie and the Mystic Falls gang. So Qetsiyah brings herself back to like handle it because she's the one who like made the Brotherhood of the Five and everything. So none of that has been like going well. And all she ends up doing is like running around with Stefan and tormenting Elena. We don't get any, like, how cool is it that you're my descendant? I'm the original Bennett. Like, isn't this amazing? No bonding time with Bonnie. No lore sharing with Bonnie. Nothing comes of it. And that is so disappointing. Like, you're telling me you dropped the original Bennett into the story. We got to know her pretty well. Like, we spend a not insignificant amount of time with her, thus why she annoys me so much. And she doesn't really do anything with Bonnie except trick her into becoming the anchor. There's just something real icky about the fact that it's a Bennett ancestor that makes Bonnie deal with more suffering. Like, was there no other way that could have been written, guys? Qetsiyah does end up getting what she wants. Silas and Amara do end up reuniting briefly, but like I said, she is crazy pants. So they end up killing her, and then he ends up getting killed. So then Qetsiyah's like, well, that's me done and dusted, and so traumatizing, and for what? And then she dies. She does find peace though, so like that's good, but what a way to end that arc, honestly. Then we have Ayana Bennett. And now this one, if you thought Qetsiyah pissed me off, oh, Ayana pisses me off for a completely different reason. So we're told when we're like meeting the originals and everything in early days TVD that Esther Michelson, the mother of that family, is the original witch. You could say that they call her that because she's the head witch in the family of original vampires, right? Sure, that language works. The way it's used though, like it's pitched like she's the original witch. And then we find out that Ayana Bennett is her mentor and taught her how to do magic in the first place. So theoretically, the only reason why Esther's good at magic, why Cole can do magic, like that's coming from Ayana's teachings. And it gets really messy when you start looking at like the lore in the originals where there's like Aunt Dahlia and everything. So Esther had a sister who could do magic, and it seems like maybe there was more pagan stuff going on over there that they just weren't really talking about yet in TVD because they didn't have it figured out. I just feel like they love to set up stories and then be like, oh, we never said that, and just change it later because they think of something that might be cooler. And I'm like, I remember the Bennett over here, okay? So you're not getting rid of her. Ayana is the one that warns Esther not to do the immortality spell on her children because she's like, the spirits are absolutely gonna punish you for that. Like, that's a terrible idea. Don't do it. And it is a variation on the immortality spell that Qetsiyah uses. So that's also like the spell that makes the vampires came from Qetsiyah, who is a Bennett. So remember when I said that the Bennett family just puts the bow on the lore for everything else? I wasn't lying. That spell is also made this time using Tatia's blood, and she is a doppelganger in the like Amara Elena timeline. Once again, tying Elena and Bonnie together centuries before they even meet. Another thing that's like lightly confusing is that the place where Esther and Ayana and the kids and stuff, like that village that they're living in, is what's gonna become Mystic Falls in Virginia. Like that's the place they're at. But later on, Grams tells us that Bonnie's family came over from Salem. So did Ayana leave and then come back again? Or are the Bennetts already spread out a little bit? And maybe Salem Bennetts moved to live with the Mystic Falls Bennetts that were already from Ayana? We don't know. They didn't correct themselves. Around this timeline with Qetsiyah and Ayana, we find out about the Witch of the Five as well. She's an unnamed Bennett, so we don't actually know much about her. We just know she's a Qetsiyah descendant that ends up being like called on to follow her work. So she sets up the Brotherhood of the Five, which are hunters that their whole goal in the beginning was to find, cure, and kill Silas. This goes on for centuries because those initial men, Klaus kills them. So the mission and the map and everything get kind of lost to time. And like, sure, but the tombstone in Silas's like holding chamber has a lot of Qetsiyah's blood in it. So it just seems like any Bennett at any time could have done a locator spell to then find Silas. And I just feel like if Qetsiyah was like given vibe checks from the other side, like that doesn't really track to me that she didn't just remind somebody that they could use a locator spell. It's just sometimes things that like you think of and you're like, why didn't that happen? But it's bad writing. So while we do see a lot of Bennetts in the season 8 flashbacks around like the siren lore and stuff, Beatrice, or B, is the only one that we really zero in on because she's connected to Ethan Maxwell, one of Matt's ancestors. Every time we see them though, it's just like the coven mingling around outside the old witch house, which they wait until season 8 to be like, surprise, it's the old Bennett house, and like, okay. It's clearly like the meeting place for the coven. It's where Beatrice lives with her mother, who is the leader of the coven at the time that the bell is being made. It's made pretty clear that Beatrice's parents died in the fire. Whether or not her dad was a witch, we don't know, but her mother was head of the coven, so she dies protecting the town. And that leaves B as our descendant that takes us on to Emily. She's either her mother or her grandmother. We learn about Beatrice because while they're looking through the vault chambers and stuff, they find these old Maxwell journals, and in one of them is a talisman. So Rick and Dorian give everything to Matt because it's his, but that talisman is actually Beatrice's, or it's something that she made for Ethan. So in the same way that when Bonnie wears Emily's necklace, she gets visions of her past, Matt starts getting plagued with visions of Ethan and Beatrice's past, and it brings up all these things that he's able to then share with everybody. I really like the idea of Matt and Bonnie's families being tied together in the canon TVD universe. The fact that the Maxwells and the Bennetts are like the forgotten founding families, I think it's cute that we see Ethan and Beatrice getting along so well, and then in present, Bonnie and Matt have a really special connection. That ties together well for me, and in a different set of writers' hands, I think it could have been like really profound and sweet. It's decent, but it's all thrown together in season 8 in a very rushed way, so it's hard to like really, really love it. But the bones were there. Like, in theory, that's a good concept. So in those flashbacks, we see Beatrice and her coven like mingling around the witch house. They are working with Ethan, who's building the Maxwell bell to get rid of the sirens. And we know that the bell works to like disrupt psychic energy, so it would have like made it impossible for the sirens to stay around town. Unfortunately, they get to Ethan first, and because he's a useless man, they're able to like siren call him and trick him into corrupting the bell. So instead of getting rid of them, it's just gonna do the hellfire explosion and blow up Mystic Falls. He has such a strong bond with Beatrice though that he's able to like secretly make a code for her, and he like gives her a journal page that has the code, like the little decoder thing on it. And so she's able to be like, whoa, something's wrong, like Ethan's warning us of something, like we have to put a stop to this. But then what ends up happening is the coven like joins hands around the bell while he's ringing it, and they like absorb the hellfire and die, preventing the town from being killed. So you know how like in the beginning of the show they tell us all these witches died in front of the old witch house? We're there now in season 8 finding out why that happened, and it was to protect the town, because of course it was. That scene where Beatrice watches her family die is horrific. Thank God Ethan is there, so at least she's not alone witnessing her entire coven get wiped out. Truly crazy work, but Ethan's there, and so he's able to like hold her through it and everything, but like the pain of that's insane. The two of them end up devising a plan, and so they're still gonna get rid of the sirens anyway. They go after Celine and Sybil, but again, Ethan is a useless man. So the sirens are able to like turn him on Beatrice, and he ends up attacking her. She seals the sirens away in one of the secret vault chambers, and then has to do the same thing to Ethan. So she like locks him up in a workroom, and it's awful. He's like banging on the door, and he's like, Beatrice, Beatrice, I cannot say, because that's all they did to him. He can't verbally tell Beatrice what's going on, how to defeat them, how to defeat Cade, but he could write it down. He could write it down. So he does. He puts everything in his journal. That's what Dorian and Rick end up finding later, and how they learn about the bone dagger and everything. Beatrice doesn't come back for him, which is an interesting distinction, okay? Any other Bennett would maybe have been like, I can get my friend out. I'm sure I can save him. What's the harm in opening the door? Not Beatrice. She leaves his ass in that room until he starves to death. Emily Bennett. Oh, I love her. So much of her character is devoted to like serving Catherine and the other vampires, which would not be a big deal if we weren't told multiple times how much Emily hates them and doesn't want to be helping them. What's even more frustrating is that later on we find out that Emily has a brother, So that opens the door for like Catherine to be using her brother as leverage to get Emily to stay with her and help her. But instead we're told, oh no, Catherine saved Emily's life and now she's like indebted to her, and so that's why she stays with her and helps her. Sorry, because we're also told that Emily is one of the most powerful Bennetts from the bloodline, and you're telling me that Catherine Pierce just keeps you under her thumb for like reasons. No. So she comes with Catherine in 1864 to Mystic Falls. We meet her in like the flashbacks, and we're told she's Catherine's handmaiden in the American South in 1864. Before you ask, no, they never call it slavery. Why would they do that? Why would they admit what it so obviously is on camera? That would be too much. Like, y'all put this Confederate plotline into the show. This wasn't in the books. This was your decision. You did this, and you're not even gonna admit it? There's also some stuff here where like it's implied that Emily helps Jonathan Gilbert because they're like flirty. And I'm sorry, but given the time period, I have a hard time being like, I'm sure that was consensual. I'm sure that was like, she was safe in those encounters. Yeah, like no, what the heck? A lot of what's going on with Emily feels tone deaf, and it feels like we just didn't look at the implications of what we were doing with those characters. Like, maybe we should have just thought it through a little bit more. Again though, because of the like flirty whatever going on between Emily and Jonathan, she is the one who helps him enchant the Gilbert device, the compass, and the rings, making the Gilbert family even better hunters. So again, the Bennetts are just carrying the lore on their back through the centuries. She's the one that helps Catherine escape town. She also seals all the other vampires into the tomb instead of like them burning in the church. So the town thinks they get rid of the vampires and everything is good to go, but really they're just all locked in the tomb for over a century. She knew even at the time that helping them was going to lead to her being condemned, so she made like a backup deal with Damon where she would protect Catherine as long as he would then protect her lineage moving forward, because she was worried about her children and the repercussions of her helping and being labeled a witch. Catherine being Catherine, she does turn on Emily. So Emily ends up getting burned at the stake in front of the old Bennett house where the other witches died. And then nasty ass Giuseppe Salvatore takes her grimoire and is buried with it. We start seeing Emily again in present day when Grams gives Bonnie an amber pendant. This was Emily's talisman. So Emily like low key and then very, very high key starts haunting Bonnie through it by giving her like dreams and visions and asking her for help. Real disruptive. Like Bonnie ends up like sleepwalking out into the middle of the woods and like falling asleep in class. It's not good. Given that she is like extremely newbie witch at this point and all of this is like very strange and new to her, she's deeply scared and she does not like interacting with Emily. It's not like warm and fuzzy ancestor feelings. It's like, why is there a demon in my head? What's going on? Like, she's very scared. Fun fact about me though, I do have this amber ring that makes me think of her necklace. Ignore the knife next to it. That's for something else. Emily's not really trying to be scary in the beginning though. She's just asking Bonnie for help because she's trying to warn her about the vampires and what's going on. She doesn't want them let out of the tomb. She doesn't trust Catherine. Like, there's a lot unfolding and she's trying to get Bonnie to handle it for her, but Bonnie's too scared to like really grasp what's going on in the beginning. And at the same time, Damon is running around trying to get the necklace from Bonnie because he knows it's Emily's and he knows that that's connected to like the tomb spell. So he's like, give me the necklace, Bonbon, but like threatening to murder her if she doesn't give it to him. So Bonnie's just getting hit on all sides at this point. I love nothing more though than when characters play other characters in their own bodies on screen. And so we get this like glorious little mini arc where Emily's just like, Bonnie, you gotta handle this for me, and she possesses her body. And those scenes are so fun. They do stuff with like reflections where like Caroline and Elena will be talking to Bonnie, but then we'll see Emily in the mirror instead. So spooky. The seance scene in general is just really fun because the girls are like trying to be really serious and like holding hands and calling on Emily's spirit. And then Bonnie gets trapped in the bathroom and the lights are flickering like crazy and everybody's screaming. And when the door finally opens, she's like, what? No, I'm totally fine. Everything's fine. That was so weird, because Emily's inside of her. Crazy. So Emily ends up taking Bonnie's body out to the woods. She does a spell. She destroys the talisman. which sucks because we never get another Bennett heirloom. So that was the one and only thing Bonnie had from her family members, I guess. And then she never gets another one, but she explodes it in order to stop the vampires from getting out, because at that point, Damon thinks that Catherine's the only one still locked up, but really it's all of them locked up. So when Stefan finds that out, he's like, oh, damn, okay, yeah, we can't let all of them out, Damon. Like, what are we gonna do? We have to find a new plan. Damon, on the other hand, batshit insane in the early days. So once she destroys the talisman and she's Bonnie again, and we know she's Bonnie again, right? Emily leaves her body and Bonnie is like, what's going on? Damon still attacks her and nearly rips her throat out. Thankfully, Stefan is there to frantically give her his blood and save her, because otherwise Bonnie 100% would have died. I wish I was kidding. The beef between Emily and Damon does not stop there though, because in season 2, when Bonnie and Jeremy and Damon go out to the Bennett house to like help her get connected to the spirits, Emily like sees Damon rocking up to the house and is like, absolutely not. And she like makes his daylight ring stop working. So initially he can't get inside properly. And then once he's inside, any sunlight streaming through the like dilapidated house will burn him. So he has to like bop around through the shadows, which will never not be funny. And then Stefan ends up talking to Emily again through Bonnie. Like they have another moment of her like low-key possessing her. He's asking for help to save Damon's life. And she's like, no, nature needs a balance. It's time for Damon to die. Stefan's like, this isn't about balance. This is about you getting revenge. And Emily gets real mad and the witches end up turning on Bonnie and tell her she's abusing her power for coming to them for like vampire problems and also, you know, other magic that she shouldn't really be messing with. Oh god. But then towards the end of that arc, Bonnie brings Jeremy's dead body because Liz Forbes shoots him straight in the heart and my man dies like within seconds. And she's like holding Jeremy, blood's pouring from her nose while she's trying to resuscitate him, and it's not looking good. She can't make the spell work, and so she calls out directly to Emily and is like, please Emily, I know you're there, help me, I love him. And the candles go out. And so she's just crying even harder because she thinks that it didn't work. But then Jeremy wakes up in her arms. And like, I know I said what I said about Jonathan and Emily and that being kind of like weird and messy probably, but it is cute. The idea that she then sees her descendant also in love with a useless Gilbert man and she helps and lets him be brought back to life. Like that's kind of cute. And it's one of the only times that the Bennett ancestors really feel like they're being like nice to Bonnie and helping her in a really genuine, thoughtful way. Just like Emily, Lucy is roped into helping Catherine because at some point that we don't get to see, Catherine saved Lucy's life. When I heard that, I was like, oh, so Catherine must be like staging accidents and then tricking these Bennett witches into thinking she's a good person, or like helping them so that they're indebted to her. Like clearly that's what's happening here, but it never gets touched on really. But the fact that it happened twice, I'm like, no, that's a pattern. Catherine's manipulative. Like that must be what's going on. They did seem to have like a bad girl friendship going on. So Lucy seems like decently comfortable with Catherine, even though she doesn't really want to be mixed up with vampires. So initially her and Catherine are working together to like break the sun and moon curse, and Lucy's going along with everything. But the second she realizes that Bonnie's there and working against them, she flips on Catherine almost instantly because she's not going to hurt another Bennett witch. So she reverses the spell that she'd done on Catherine and Elena and then curses the moonstone and like helps trap Catherine so that they can win instead. I love the way they have Bonnie like feel Lucy's magic at the party. She comes down the stairs with Jeremy, they're walking away and she's like, whoa, can you feel that? And Jeremy's like, no, what are you talking about? And she just runs off through the crowd and immediately tracks down Lucy and is like, hey, sorry, do I know you? And Lucy instantly knows who she is and is just like, oh, no, I don't think so. Like, I'm a +1, I don't know anybody, and leaves, but turns on Catherine and helps and everything. The fact that it's the strength of their family bond, even though they've never met, they're like distant cousins, right? It's not like they're close family members. It's enough of a push for her to like break off ties from vampires and promise to herself and to Bonnie that she's gonna stop letting them like rule her life. She does kind of confusingly tell Bonnie that Bonnie's one of the good ones, and so she actually should be in the middle of the vampire drama. I wish she'd been like, come with me. Like, girl, no, take her with you, please God. In that scene, she tells Bonnie like, don't worry, we'll see each other again really soon. No, actually, you'll see her again in season 8. After she's already dead. But she does end up helping again off screen in season 6. Damon goes and gets a vial of her blood so that they can try to get Bonnie out of the prison world with Liv. Doesn't work, but she does give her blood up without question to help Bonnie. Her backstory again is like a little murky. All we know is that she admits to having a history of like helping vampires and kind of being lost in their business. Because of the plot, she knows a lot about the Sun and Moon Curse. It's unclear if that's like something that Catherine told her about and they've been sort of like off and on working on the whole time, or if Lucy had knowledge about it and maybe that's why Catherine wanted to work with her. So like I said, by season 8, she's dead. We find out that she's the Bennett that sealed the vault, so she's the reason like Yvette is like stuck inside for 4 years. And Virginia, the little sister, kills her so that the vault can never be opened again. Because at that point, Bonnie's legally dead, so when Virginia kills Lucy, she thinks she's killing like the last Bennett. It's just really sad that we have her from season 2 until season 7, and we never see her again. I almost wish they didn't have the line where she tells Bonnie like, I'll be in touch, I'll see you again soon, because it's like that door was open and Bonnie could have had very easily like at least just 1 or 2 scenes with her, like learning some more about the Bennetts, continuing her training since Grams is dead. It was right there, and it would have been really easy to work it into the plot. Lucy could have come back during the Expression arc and tried to help her then. Like, it's just a lot that could have been done that they just were like, no, she's gone. We don't know where Lucy went. I don't love any parental figure in the show as much as I love Sheila Bennett. Grams, she's everything to me. She's such a fun character, and I really wish we knew more like detailed information about her, because they do sprinkle in a handful of little crumbs, and she just sounds like such a badass. Like everything we learn about her, I'm like, how did we get there, Sheila? Sorry, you did what? Why are you friends with the Gemini? Like, I need to know more about that. Do they just keep you guys on the payroll so that when they have a prison world to make, they can just... We find out that she has a history of being involved in civil rights stuff, which is kind of crazy because I think they reference 1969 and her birthday is like 1956 or 54. So she's like young when Stefan is saying like, I remember seeing you at the marches. She was like a very young, badass teenager. Where was that? The dynamic that she has specifically with the Salvatore brothers is so funny because all things considered, she's very nice to Stefan. She doesn't let him in when he comes to the house. Like she opens the door and is like polite to him. She's like, I'm not inviting you in. Like, I'm not stupid. But she also asks him to like look out for Bonnie. So there's like a level of trust that she seems to have with Stefan. And in contrast, when Damon shows up, she's like, you've got some nerve knocking on a Bennett witch's door and asking her for anything. Get him, girl. She stays putting him in his place. She's like, you're not a friend to witches. You're not a friend to me or my granddaughter, and you need to get out of my town. Like, she's like smiling and polite with Stefan, and then she's just attacking Damon on the porch. On a more personal note, she's also the Bennett to lock Kai in the prison world. Love to know how we got there, Sheila. Like, we don't have any information about why she agreed to it, how she felt about it, how she felt about taking Joe in afterwards. I also want to know about that, right? Like, did you know them? Did you know he was a siphon? Or did you just find out after the incident? How long did Joe stay with you? Did Bonnie know Joe? Were Bonnie and Joe ever in the house at the same time, Sheila? I need answers. Did toddler Bonnie Bennett run around the house while adult Joe was in the house, not knowing that like 10 years later, some real crazy shit was gonna happen with her brother? Because that adds something to Joe staying at Whitmore. Like, was she still friends with Sheila? I feel like there must have been Bonnie and Joe overlappage and we just don't know about it. I just send Bonnie to the prison world, Sheila. I just need you to tell me that one thing. I need to know your reasons for it, okay? She taught occult studies at Whitmore College, so she has like a ton of knowledge that would presumably span like multiple covens. We never do a lot with this because Grams does teach Bonnie magic, but in the beginning, Bonnie's kind of fighting her on it. And so the lessons aren't going super in depth. It's just like basics of like witch culture for Bonnie to learn and us to learn too. And then Grams dies. And so Bonnie does get her grimoire, but there's never really any moments of like Bonnie getting all of her notes and stuff, but she does seem to have the like standard feelings that are held amongst witches. So like they don't like vampires, they don't trust them. She encourages Bonnie to stay away from them, but then kind of sees what Lucy sees, that Bonnie's not going to do that, and these are her friends. And the more it snowballs out of control, Grams is just sort of there to be like, you need to be careful, but I'm gonna help you because I love you, and ultimately the only thing I want is for you to be happy, and if you're happy in this shit show of vampire stuff, sure, I guess I will help you. So in the beginning of season 1, like as Bonnie's coming into her powers, a lot of what we see in the beginning is like her referencing Grams, and the girls kind of pick on her. Caroline picks on her a lot and is like, yeah, well, your Grams is an alcoholic. So there's an aura around Grams where like most of the town seems to think that she's just sort of like the kooky witch lady that teaches occult studies at the college, and they don't really believe she's magical, but like, hate to break it to you, she is. Bonnie grew up thinking she was just kind of the kooky witch lady, because after Abby leaves, her dad just decides, I'm gonna raise her like a human, like I'm just gonna pretend like none of this is real, and he makes Sheila agree to that too. I'm assuming there was probably something where it was like, if you want to be in her life, you better not tell her about magic. Grams like sort of goes along with it, but Bonnie does say that like things have happened where she's just sort of like, yeah, but I just blew it off because Grams is kind of weird like that. Like, I'm sure it doesn't mean anything. Grams is the one that when Bonnie gets scared of her power for the first time and like causes a magical block in herself, she explains that those can't be undone with a spell. Bonnie will just have to like work through that fear on her own, and her magic will come back when she's ready for it. And let me tell you, that plot device will come back to haunt us with a vengeance. We lose Grams way too early, like I said, because she helps undo the spell on the tomb, but really all she does is like open the tomb. So Stefan and Damon get stuck inside, and Bonnie is like, we have to let it down completely, like we have to get Damon and Stefan out. Grams is like, this is a bad idea, but she does it anyway, overexerts herself, and then ends up dying later that night. Thankfully, she does show up a handful of more times throughout the show. Like we see her routinely all the way up until the finale in season 8. Usually when Bonnie's in distress, because at the end of the day, she's the only one that like 100% is always there for Bonnie, always looking out for her, always taking care of her. She's her emotional rock in so many ways because the other characters do not offer that level of comfort to her. And so I'm glad that we get a handful of moments of them being really genuinely supportive and kind to each other, because God knows Bonnie needs it. We do have to watch her get tortured around Bonnie's expression arc, which is not fun, because we watch like dark magic flow through her spirit and she's screaming in pain and Bonnie's screaming, and it's really scary and awful. I don't know if I believe that it's 100% true, because it's at the same time that Shane is like manipulating her and tricking her. So there's a chance that the spirits hurt Grams one time to scare Bonnie. I don't think I believe that they're just like holding her in like suspended agony, waiting for Bonnie to stop being bad. Like, don't think that's what they were doing. And if you told me that that whole thing was fake and Grams was never hurt and it was just a trick to get Bonnie to listen, I'd believe that too, because again, spirits aren't usually evil. The only thing I could think of that I would really change here, other than just like not killing her and having her live through the show and like be with Bonnie physically, is that we don't really get like a goodbye with Grams, because we see her at the end of season 5, right before Bonnie goes into the prison world for season 6, and she tells her like she's leaving, she's gonna find her peace because she's made sure that Bonnie found hers. And there's this vibe that like Bonnie may never see Grams again. Like wherever she's going, she may not be able to come back to Bonnie again. And it's sweet, they hug, it's very emotional. But then in season 8, Bonnie uses her like growing psychic powers to essentially visit Grams inside like a memory, and she's able to get Grams to help her. She's able to update Grams and tell her about Enzo a little bit. And that is nice. Like I said, I'm always glad when Bonnie gets moments like that of genuine connection, but it's not a genuine connection. It's her memory of Grams. So I do think it brings Bonnie comfort, but it's not real. And then Grams shows up and holds her hand again in season 8, but they don't talk. So she's there with her, helping her in that moment, but they don't get like a goodbye, you know? At the end of the show, when we have the like ghost montage, Enzo is the one with Bonnie in her room and Grams doesn't show up again. So I guess I just wish like we saw Grams maybe watching her get on the plane, or like sitting on the plane with her in the empty seat, or something like that, that just like showed that Grams was like still watching her, because we know she is, right? Like she's there, but we don't get to see her. So that's just a little disappointing for me. Now, Abby Bennett's on my list because she abandoned Bonnie as a child, and you can't be forgiven for that, all right? She made up for it a little bit, but I don't forgive her completely. She left her with her human father, and so Bonnie grows up with like this repressed magical lineage that she has no knowledge of, and that just sucks. Like, she's from one of the most badass bloodlines in the whole TVDU, and she has no idea. So Abby's backstory, we know that she grew up in Mystic Falls with Sheila. Her birthday is also in 1972, so there could have been Abby and Joe overlap that we also just don't talk about. She was best friends with Elena's mother Miranda and Caroline's mother Liz. I do love friendship history repeating itself. She left town after using an excessive amount of expression and dark magic to entomb and desiccate Michael. And we find out that that was to save Elena. And her reason for leaving was after that, she wanted to be Abby Wilson, the woman, instead of Abby Bennett, the witch. And I'm like, girl, don't play with me. You had a husband and child. Are you joking? The spirits do end up punishing her though, both for the dark magic and for leaving Bonnie. So when we meet her again, she does not have magical powers anymore. The spirits took her magic from her. So she has like innate witch abilities, like she can't be compelled, she has a connection to the spirits of nature and stuff, but she does not have any magical powers when we see her again in present day. But let that whole thing about her saving Elena sink in for you, because that means that like present day Bonnie, everything that goes wrong in her life goes wrong because of Elena, and child Bonnie lost her mother because her mother was saving Elena. Like, their friendship was just doomed from the start. When she left, she was with another guy and he had a son. So when we meet Abby again, she has like an adoptive child named Jamie, who's a little bit older than Bonnie and the rest of the kids. What really messes me up here is that she doesn't recognize Bonnie right away when she shows up to the house. So that means she like 100% left her behind and like just didn't even check in. Ever. And then things really get messy because she ends up drugging Bonnie and kidnapping her to save Jamie because she's more attached to him now. And then only after like spending a little more time with Bonnie does she like second guess herself and ends up sort of like double crossing Klaus and like playing both sides to try to save Bonnie and Jamie. Damon ends up turning her into a vampire. This comes to pass after Esther Michelson shows up because she tells them, you know, Ayana Bennett was like one of my close mentors, and so it feels only right that I channel from her bloodline. So she wants to use Abby and Bonnie and like channel them together to make it stronger since they're mother and daughter. So Damon and Stefan figure out that one of them has to die, and obviously they're not going to kill Bonnie, so they kill Abby, but they don't kill her, they just turn her into a vampire. She does not handle the transition well. She's very depressed. The loss of connection to like nature and her garden was what really did her in, so she's not doing great, and she ends up leaving after she accidentally bites Jamie, which is like a totally normal thing for newbie vampires, right? Like, she doesn't kill him, she just like gets overwhelmed and attacks him a little bit. Caroline's there, they stop her, but it freaks Abby out so much that she ends up just being like, I can't risk it, and she runs away to like keep Jamie and Bonnie safe from her. But Caroline and I also think that it's just kind of a pattern for her, like when things get tough, she's just gonna cut and run before things can get worse. She comes back around the expression arc because Rudy calls her in and is like, you gotta help. Like, Bonnie's like losing her mind, and she's the one that like brings in that coven that tries to help Bonnie and then ends up dying. Then later in season 6, when Bonnie brings back the cure, she tells Damon that she was gonna give it to her mom, which I'm glad that they tell us that. Like, I'm glad that Bonnie's first instinct is to give the cure to her mother. But she tells us that Abby's actually pretty happy now, so she doesn't feel like she needs to do that, and she gives the cure to Damon instead to give to Elena. I really only soften towards Abby at the very end after Enzo's death, when Caroline calls her in so that Bonnie's not alone through her grief. There's just something really special and magical about the way that she helps Bonnie do like those rituals over Enzo's body, and it does kind of blow up, right? Where she gets nervous and like ends up burning his body in front of Bonnie, which is pretty traumatizing. But the before moments where they've got him like in that little greenhouse space and they're like putting like flower petals over his body and like praying over him, like, That's really sweet and beautiful, and I'm glad that they have that time together. Like, I think that's really special. And her reasoning for like trying to sever that connection with Enzo that's like lingering on is because she knows that it's on some level dark magic. Like, the spirits and stuff aren't supposed to stay connected like that. Like, it's not gonna end well, and she knows that it'll end up destroying Bonnie, and that's not what Enzo would want either. It is interesting though that Caroline's the one to call her in, because we saw Bonnie sort of bridging a relationship with Abby through the college arc where she's like sending her voice messages. She tried to give her the cure, so she called her in season 6, and now something truly horrific and awful has happened to her and she doesn't call her mom. I mean, Bonnie does kind of like rightfully shut down, so it's not that it doesn't 100% track. It just is kind of weird that they seem to have built their relationship back up to something, you know, semi-good, and then she doesn't lean on her in that moment. My girl, light of my life. Has there ever been another witch? I don't think so. When we first meet her, she's a high school cheerleader. She's a little mean. We're not going to talk about the slur usage in the pilot. All right, the early scripts are insane. That's not her fault. And overall, she's kind of like quirky and a little bit more shy, but ultimately like kind and fun to be around. She has like a lightheartedness to her that is necessary because Elena in the beginning is like Miss Doom and Gloom, and Caroline is stressed about everything at all times. We know she's like best friends with Elena, and in the beginning, they're just like tolerating Caroline. You know, they kind of bully her a little bit. Low-key and high-key in multiple scenes. That does soften as the show goes on, because the way they handle the trio dynamics is like, say something like goes wrong with Elena and Bonnie, then by default Caroline and Bonnie will become best friends, and that goes for like all of them, right? Like if Bonnie and Caroline are fighting, then Elena's in the middle of it. Like, it's interesting. It's girl dynamics. It makes sense. When Bonnie returns after Grams's death, because they don't let us see her grief unfold on screen naturally, she just has this like sudden personality change where she's extremely anti-vampire, she's real weird with Elena, and she's been talking to Caroline behind Elena's back. While this makes sense because she went through something wildly traumatic, like you would have a little personality shift there, that's totally fine. Because we didn't get to watch it unfold, it feels really intense, and it opens Bonnie up for fans to be annoyed with her, because out of nowhere, she's suddenly like really mean and snippy with Elena and like giving her the cold shoulder when they were just best friends. This becomes a really unfortunate pattern with Bonnie's character, because unless you're like paying attention and you're a viewer who is like in tune to what she's going through, these shifts in her feel really sudden because we very rarely see them play out completely on screen. It happens again in the beginning when she flips on Caroline really quickly after Caroline transitions. Again, it's a valid response because she has lost so much of her life to vampires, and now yet another one of her best friends is being sucked into it, so it feels like her life has just been completely overrun. But because we haven't really explored how that feels for her, suddenly she's just kind of being really bitchy to Caroline and like not accepting that she's still her best friend even though she has fangs. And it's frustrating because the other cast members get to have emotional outbursts and like work through their emotions and do big things. Elena and Caroline specifically like turn off their humanity and go on not insignificant rampages, but the second Bonnie does anything that feels a little extra, everybody's mad at her, because 9 times out of 10, you have no idea how she got from point A to point B, and suddenly she's like just exploding. We know so little about Bonnie outside of the traits that she like shares with the other girl, you know, like being a cheerleader. But our girl was voted prom queen, which tells us that she must have been beloved and popular amongst the kids in the school. She beat Elena and Caroline, but they don't show that to us. So that's just something that we have to like infer. It's crazy to me that Bonnie doesn't sing in the show when Kat Graham is one of the only actors to have an actual music career outside of her acting. Her songs aren't even used in the show when some of them fit the vibe, or she could have very easily written something specifically to fit the vibe. Like, why? We know why. I'm gonna get into it. Her style is also so wildly underutilized. She ends up just kind of wearing whatever 90% of the time. My favorite outfits for her are from season 6 because it's the only time that we see her fitting into like a look. And they didn't really even do anything, all things considered, to make it like scream 90s fashion. It's just like, let's put a flannel around her waist. But you know, like the other girls have distinct looks. Like Ayana is gonna be rocking multiple skin-tight layered shirts all the time. Caroline, she's kind of girlier. A lot of times she's in like dresses or florals, like stuff like that, soft, like pretty colors. And then Bonnie just sort of wears whatever. There were so many options that we could have done for her. Personally, I love the idea of her having kind of like a generic style in the beginning, and then as she grows in her power as a witch, maybe it evolves and gets a little witchier and spookier so that by the time we get to season 8, she's like fully in that persona. Like, that would have been so easy and cool to do. I never see her dressed up outside of like prom and the weddings, which sucks because the other two get multiple moments of like being the belle of the ball and having big sparkly ball gowns. Like the scene with Enzo at the end is not bad, but she's not like in anything fancy. It's just like a pretty green dress, and it's not even a lovey-dovey special moment, okay? It kind of is, but then it gets soured by the fact that she doesn't want to become a vampire. The fact that she's not at the Michelson ball when Ayana Bennett is one of the reasons why Esther even knows how to use magic. Like, and then to have Esther go to Bonnie and Abby, like it would be one thing if they never ended up crossing paths, but the fact that Esther talks to them directly and is like, I'm so honored to be able to channel from you guys after working with Ayana for so long. So why the hell wasn't Bonnie Bennett invited to your ball, bitch? They don't even tell us why she didn't go. She just wasn't invited. You will never catch me apologizing for the way my Bonnie coded OC dresses in my book. I will be putting her in every pretty princess dress that I want to put her in, okay? I got years to make up for it. I'm gonna mention this as well because I know Kat has like touched on it. There's a Vogue interview that you guys can watch. It makes me very sad. I know I told you guys in my Gemini video, I try to stay out of actor fandoms. I love Kat Graham. Meeting her made that worse, okay? She is so freaking sweet. Like, cannot stress that enough. If you've ever heard somebody tell you she's a nice person, believe them, because oh my god. But she talks about in this interview the fact that they wouldn't let Bonnie have Kat's natural hair. So Bonnie's always wearing wigs. And in the beginning of the show, they can't even be bothered to do a good job with them, which, like, if you're gonna insist that she fits this look that you think she needs to fit, do a good job. Like, oh my god, Kat's natural hair is so pretty. And that would have been such an easy way to bring a little bit of Kat into Bonnie, add a little bit of like natural curls representation. Like, it was right there. And the fact that it led to like Kat dealing with insecurities, that will never not piss me off. Like, she is so beautiful and stunning. How dare you, Julie? While we're here, let's just touch on the fact that you cannot deny there is like an obvious mistreatment of Kat that was going on. I'm not even gonna say behind the scenes because you can see it like in interviews and panels and stuff. There's like a disdain that they seem to have for Kat and for Bonnie as a character, and you can see it in the way that they talk online at panels and conventions and stuff. It's out there, like it's not hidden. I just can't imagine the things that she went through behind the scenes, because what we know about is bad enough and it's just like surface level stuff that like fans have put together. It's so disappointing because in my opinion, Kat Graham's one of the best actors that they had on the show, and they wait until like the last 3 seasons to like start giving her stuff of substance because they exhaust everything else, and then they're suddenly like, all right, let's see what Bonnie can do. You had her the whole time. You could have been taking care of her the whole time. And to just think that we were all like falling in love with Bonnie and supporting her while Kat was going through stuff off screen just like breaks my heart. I'm so grateful that there's such a strong fan base around Bonnie because, like I said, she seems like a person who genuinely deserves all of that love and attention. I have a story time about meeting her over on my TikTok if you want like the full thing, but she was seriously just like the sweetest person ever. She went out of her way to like connect with me and have a genuine moment and just was so engaged and like warm. And I was so honored and thankful that I could like look her in the eyes and tell her how much Bonnie means to me, because like, I just hope she knows. Like, guys, we hardly even see Bonnie's house. We spend most of our time in the early seasons in Graham's house, which would be fine if the Gilbert and Forbes houses weren't like staple set pieces when it doesn't even have to do with the plot, right? Like, we will just be at their house for scenes that could happen anywhere theoretically. And then we have that gross scene in season 8 where Bonnie and Enzo are in her bed. And it would be cute if we weren't laughing about the fact that He thinks it's hot that they're in her childhood bedroom. Now, why did we write that? We only really start seeing her house in season 4 around the time that we finally meet her dad, you know, the parent that she supposedly lives with. Don't even get me started on that. Like, they reference him multiple times. We meet everybody else's parental figures, right? And we do meet Graham's. I will give them that. But the fact that Bonnie lives with her dad and we just don't meet him for multiple seasons. And then when he shows up, he's kind of an asshole. He's trying to protect her, but he's not great. Like, he's not fun to be around. None of us enjoy seeing him with her. And then she has an absentee mom. That's convenient. We'll just never have to get to know her family dynamics, I guess, because they don't seem to matter to anybody but us. The fact that we don't get to see her mourn Graham's specifically bothers me almost more than anything else, because it happens on screen. You know, we see Graham's die, we see Bonnie find her body, she's devastated. They do like hug and comfort her through that, and then Bonnie disappears for several episodes. There's no funeral for Graham's. We don't get to see any kind of like witchy celebration around her life or anything like that. Everybody around her feels so tone deaf. Like, Elena is like, why are you so upset? Like, I know Graham's died, but like, come on, Bonnie. Like, I'm dealing with having 2 vampire boyfriends. That's a really big deal too. And so like the disconnect is crazy, because at that point, Graham's was the only tie to her history that she had, and she's gone. And she has no way of communicating with her. And again, we don't even get to see Bonnie like gather up her grimoires or go through her house and all the memories in her house. That would have been a really easy scene to do, to just have the gang come over to Graham's house with her and help her go through all the witchy stuff and kind of see Graham's life through Bonnie's eyes. That would have been so simple, but no. And this whole thing with Graham's death and Bonnie disappearing really marks the start of one of the most annoying things the writers do with Bonnie as a character. Anytime that there's something that Bonnie's magic could like easily solve, they're just immediately like, oh, so I guess we need to pretend she's not in this scene, get rid of her magic, or kill her off entirely. And it's so exhausting. Like, her magic stays getting blocked the whole 8 seasons. Only 2 times I'm okay with it happening are when she gets it back by Jonas unlocking it right before Stefan kills her, because I like that his last act is like fixing her, and then giving up so soon. I'm embarrassed for you, because that's the best. But there's just not enough payoff from any of the other times that it happens for me to feel like it matters. It's just stupid. Stop taking her magic away. It's similar to how I feel about the Siphons and the Heretics being overpowered, and then them like very quickly walking that back to like tell you there's ways they can be beaten. Bonnie Bennett is crazy powerful. You made a crazy powerful witch who's willing to go above and beyond for the people she loves. Freaking own it and be better writers. There are other types of drama out there that you guys could have like injected into the story that couldn't be fixed by magic. Not everything has a magical solution. That would have been really interesting for Bonnie to like learn the hard way. But no, they just strip her of her power continuously. The fact that there's so many times that they'll just like chuck her off into the ether and then parade her back into the story conveniently a few episodes later when somebody needs something, that'll just never not completely annoy me. Because again, I'm watching the show for Bonnie. So sometimes I'm watching the show and I'm like, damn, we haven't seen her for like 3 episodes. Where is Kat? They don't even know where she is half the time. She's just missing. The only time that the whole hiding her away and bringing her back thing works for me is when she rocks up to the ritual and attacks Klaus. And that man is on the ground screaming in agony like, no, you were dead. 10 out of 10. That is the original, and you've got him on his back groveling like a dog. Yes, ma'am. Yes. I just feel like we really moved on from that way too quickly, because that is one of the best plans they have in the whole show, and then nothing of that caliber really happens again. Like, it just gets real silly from there on out. I mentioned this in Graham's section, but initially Bonnie thinks Graham's is crazy. When she starts talking about being a witch, she's like, I'm not psychic. That's not real. I've had weird prophetic visions my whole life, but those can't be real powers, Grams. That's crazy. And then when her powers start to like really manifest, she's like, okay, Grams, maybe you weren't crazy. Turns out maybe you were telling the truth. Help me. I'm scared. She starts to slowly accept her magic and her power and her lineage, But again, unfortunately, a lot of this happens off screen. We don't get to see her really work through these issues. It's just suddenly something that she's accepted. And more than that, she very quickly decides, like, it's my job to use my powers to protect everybody. That's why I've been given them. And I'm like, how did we get there, girl? How did we get there? Just such an important detail about her character that they're gonna abuse the hell out of. And I'm like, the least you could have done is let us see her work through this on screen. Like, she's just a kid. They're all just kids. And because the actors are a little older, we forget that. But like, they're teenagers when all of a sudden their life gets overrun by the supernatural. Bonnie has no idea she has magical power in her, okay? And then all of a sudden she can light candles with her mind. Like, that would be hard to adjust to, but they don't show it to us. Not enough, at least. It happens so quickly, and then it's so glossed over by everybody in the show and by Bonnie herself. Like, she just sort of is like, yeah, I guess I'm a witch now. I'll risk my life to save everybody, why not? And I get it, that like, it's the Vampire Diaries, and we're supposed to be focusing on the fact that Elena has not one, but two evil vampire boyfriends. But I'm just so much more interested in Bonnie the teenage witch over here, who just figured out she can light things on fire with her mind. In season 8, we get confirmation from Kai that like witch magic starts manifesting around toddler age, which is around the time Abby left Bonnie. So the implication there is that little Bonnie was in so much pain that she sort of like blocked off her own magic, and then Rudy repressed it in her, so she never gets any stronger until suddenly it all starts bursting out when she's older. She has her psychic abilities, but she always kind of brushes them off and acts like they're not really that big of a deal. I love the scenes in season 2 where she gets to like talk to and interact with the witch spirits, but she doesn't seem to realize that those are her witches she's talking to. Now, whether or not the writers knew that for sure at the time, I don't know, but the groundwork was already there because they tell us that like Bonnie's family came over from Salem, and then the witches that were burned were the witches from Salem. So you'd think that they already knew that that meant that at least most of the witches that died were Bennetts, but it doesn't seem to connect, and so Bonnie is like in this house that belonged to her coven, and she has no idea that she's standing on her family history. It's just half-assed in a way that seems so unnecessary because, like, you laid the groundwork. Like, it was right there. It seems like you started it. Why didn't you just finish what you were doing? Why did you wait until season 8 to confirm it? Like, oh my God. You know what else was unnecessary? The fact that she's like smiling and grinning and like so unbelievably happy the first time she channels Luca's power. And then suddenly when she's channeling her own ancestors, she's screaming in agony. Why does her magic always have to hurt her in these wishy-washy ways? Because again, this could have been a really special, powerful moment of her feeling her ancestral magic for the first time after being cut off from it for her whole life. But no, sure, let's make her cry and scream in pain. Like, why not? And then almost immediately after this, Jeremy is like, so how much power can you draw from 100 dead witches? And she shows off by like playing with the weather and like doing all these cool spells instinctually. And she's having fun, she's smiling. So why did it have to hurt her a minute ago? They could have warned her just by talking to her. She was already in the room with them, listening to them. Could have been a moment for us to see some of the ghost a little bit more and have them physically interact with her, or like baby cross over the way that Emily does. They could have possessed Jeremy and talked through him for all I care. Like, there's just no reason for them to hurt her. Because in theory, it's like not a bad idea for them to warn her. She's a young witch. She has next to no training, and Grams is dead, so she's got basically nobody to look out for her. But it just becomes a pattern. And so it's like, I don't ever want to see her in pain like that again. Like, knock it off. And then the fact that like this overlaps with the expression arc really makes things messy, because again, this was a time for her to like connect with her ancestors, connect to the Bennett magic, and instead it gets very quickly poisoned because she's messing around with expression at the same time and bringing people back from the dead, which is disrupting nature's balance. So she gets punished and ends up losing her magic again. And you know what? The resuscitation spell is Emily's. She got it from her grimoire in the Gilbert journals. Like, girl, you made the damn thing. Just be proud of her and let her use it. The expression arc is really cool because we get to see her tapping into like a darker side of magic and doing essentially whatever the hell she wants. I'll simply never recover from a whole season of her just flipping Klaus around the screen after he was so mean to her. Like, yes ma'am, take him for a walk. When she makes the fire trail in the woods on the island, when she kills Jeremy for the first time and gets that little pleased smile on her face as the dark magic comes into her because it feels good. Yeah, that's my girl right there. When she nearly barbecues Shane and her own father inside the police station. The fight with Elena and Silas at prom? Yeah, my guy, get out of her head if you know what's good for you. I just need somebody to explain to me why she channels the entire expression triangle, which is 3 murder sites, right? So think of the pain of all those people, and then she's channeling that, and somehow that hurts her less than her own ancestral magic. Like, sure. When she becomes the anchor, we get this whole backstory on how it drove Amara insane. And so we know as the viewer, like, damn, that's gonna suck for Bonnie. She's gonna be in a lot of pain. That's probably gonna be really hard for her to deal with. And then she just disappears and comes back, and she has a new haircut and she's in college. And everybody around her is sort of just like, haha, Bonnie, we're still got your back in kind of a ghost form now, and we can all touch you and interact with you again. We missed you. So we don't get to see her settle into that power at all. We just come back after the summer, and she's just doing it. She's just the anchor in excruciating pain randomly throughout the day because all the supernatural creatures in the world that die show up to her, and their spirits have to pass through her to get to the other side. But sure, I guess we didn't need to spend a little bit of time watching her adjust to that. I didn't need to see like the first time that a ghost showed up to her and passed through. Like, sure, that's just crazy. Like, one of the only times we see her genuinely work through and adjust to like something like that happening to her is when like the Reyna arc happens and she's suddenly the huntress. We do get to see her go through the mental process of like, I'm just gonna die because I'm not gonna wake up and kill my friends, and then being forced to wake up by Damon, and then going through the motions of hunting Damon and Enzo down. We get to see that from start to finish, which is nice, but that's the only time it really happens. All the other times it's like half off screen, and then she comes back and she's like, let me fill you in briefly with some exposition. And I'm like, why didn't you just show me that in an episode? It's like a 5-minute scene, maybe, and I'd be satisfied. It's just so infuriating. And then the way Bonnie's storyline itself wraps up just feels like a slap in the face for anybody that ever said they wish there was more for her or they wished it could be better, because they give us this big, powerful, like, look at all the Bennetts, look at them coming together to save Mystic Falls and to protect Bonnie. But we don't know half of them in that room. You never showed me any of those women, and now suddenly they're rallying behind Bonnie to help her. And it means that characters like Lucy are confirmed dead, which just means that Bonnie is alone. And then to like dangle so many potential love interests in front of us and then do a pair the spare move and put her with Enzo in the end, just to kill him anyway? Like, yes, okay, Caroline loses Stefan in the end. She still has her life with her daughters. And thanks to Bonnie, Elena and Damon get back together. So everybody around her either has a family or a love interest or a project. Meanwhile, Bonnie just leaves to travel the world on her own with her dead ghost boyfriend encouraging her from the other side, but she can't see him anymore because she got rid of that realm. So that connection's broken. And like, on one hand, good for her. Babe, I hope you run and never come back. But they also have her tell us canonically that she's jealous of Caroline's life, that all she wanted was a family and someone to come home to. So how can I be happy with the fact that she's traveling the world on her own, knowing that? Why did she have to tell me? We didn't know that for sure until season 8, and then you go and take it from her. That whole thing though, with her being dead before she's the anchor, like, nobody even notices. She's just gone. And they're all just sort of existing around her, sort of mentioning her a little bit and like talking to her through Jeremy because he's the only one that can see her because he's got ghost speaking powers now. Like, it's so dumb that those are your best friends and they don't even notice. Like, I'm sorry, Elena, but I've currently got a bestie going through like a whirlwind honeymoon phase right now, and she still makes time to call me weekly for updates. The bar is on the ground and you just tripped over it. A big thing that bothers me so often about Bonnie's friendships with literally everyone is that almost all of her interactions with them boil down to them wanting something from her or using her for something, even when they're acting like they aren't doing that, at the end of the day, like that's what's going on. There are so few and far between moments of other characters checking on Bonnie, seeing how she's doing, just asking about her or interacting with her on a level that's just friendship. And that does stem from the fact that she's so often a plot device or like an object for them instead of an actual character in the cast. And God forbid Bonnie ever call them out on that bullshit, because the second she does, everybody goes, oh my God, Bonnie, you're being so selfish. Wow, I can't believe you're having such a selfish streak right now. Like, we thought you liked risking your life for us. That's what you said last week. What the hell? And if you've seen my recap videos, you probably know that I really don't like her breakdown over Kai in season 6, not because I don't think she's allowed to be mad at him. What she goes through in the prison world is awful. But why it bothers me so much that she has this huge explosive meltdown over him in season 6 is because it's clearly like a tipping point for larger issues. She's been being abused by the whole friend group for 6 seasons. And now here's this stranger who enforces that in her and reminds her that that's happening. But then it's just never touched on. Like, the level of anger that she funnels into her feelings for Kai, somebody should have called her out on that. Somebody should have been like, I fear maybe you're not just mad at him, because it's like an abnormal amount of rage that she directs at him, guys. There's more going on there that they just never touch on, because that would mean admitting that the rest of the cast is selfish as hell, and they're not going to do that. Like, yes, she's gotten mad at characters like Damon before, but never like this, never to this level. Killing Kai post-merge means killing the entire coven, which is a crazy thing for Bonnie to be okay with. Like, any other time, she'd be like, whoa, that's so many people. Joe's pregnant. We can't do that. But she's so overwhelmed and emotional in this situation that suddenly she just doesn't care. She just gotta get rid of him. It just, to me, feels so obvious that she's using him as like a focal point so that she doesn't have to open herself up to the added pain of admitting that her friends are also pretty terrible most of the time. And again, because Bonnie is never really given space to like express her emotions, these outbursts feel really sudden a lot of the time, or like a little too big for what's going on, because we don't often see the buildup. At least in season 6, we see what she's going through, right? Like, we were there with her while her and Kai were fighting. Then we get little snippets of how depressed she's getting while she's locked away by herself. And she's only alone for a handful of months. Like, she's alone from Thanksgiving to her birthday. So it's like 3-ish months, and it destroys her. Like, that is really the thing that like breaks her down. And it's interesting that then that comes back later in season 8, and she tells Caroline, like, I feel so alone that I just want to die. I would argue that that's probably Bonnie's biggest fear, which is awful considering that she ends the show without Enzo. So you've taken her final partner from her. Like, I just want to shake the writers. The fact that there's not more insistence from the friend group to help Bonnie through these situations, it's always something like, oh, she comes back from being in the prison world and Caroline's humanity's off, so she's a useless best friend right now. She's actually more of a problem than anything else. Or, yeah, Enzo got kidnapped, but Caroline and Stefan might have to break up, so that's definitely a bigger issue. Grams is dead, but Elena has 2 scary boyfriends that we really need to help her pick between. Also, Stefan's on a murder rampage. It would really be helpful if somebody could talk her through that. But the fact that they don't know she's dead, like, that is my 13th reason. Are you kidding me? Months. She's just missing for months, and none of you noticed? How am I supposed to believe those are her best friends? I don't care how happy you are. I don't care what you're going through. If your best friend drops off the freaking face of the earth and is suddenly only answering emails, something is wrong. And that whole arc is made worse by Bonnie being okay with it. Like, she tells us multiple times, I'm happy I gave up my life for Jeremy. I would do it again. I don't mind being dead. I just want my friends to be happy and move on without me. What? And while the funeral scene, in theory, is really sweet and intimate and special, Bonnie is the one doing all the talking. She's going over memories and encouraging them to move on and be happy. So once again, at her own funeral, she is the one offering comfort and support. Are we joking? I think the flippant like attitude that Caroline and Elena have when she comes back and she's the anchor would work if they were also showing just a little bit more concern from her, because like, they are college freshmen, okay? They're just kids. And it's not that I want them to be like perfectly emotionally mature and everything. I get where the idea of like this insistence that they just try to have fun and go back to their normal lives, like that makes sense. But it just really grates on my nerves that they're like, yay, you're back, let's throw a kegger, while she's like screaming, crying, throwing up on the quad while little old ladies are like passing through her. And no one notices. Now, I don't hate Ayana, okay? I think she suffers from main character syndrome. It's very easy to grow to hate her because she does start feeling annoying pretty early on. And with her and Bonnie specifically, they're best friends in the beginning, right? Like when we open the show, they're together, they're the BFFs. But they have such a doomed friendship. Like we were always racing towards everything that happened tonight was to save you. And that's okay because she loves you so much. But somehow she's always the one who gets hurt. Bonnie tells Ayana about her magic first, and Ayana is kind of like cutesy about it and doesn't judge her. Like she lets Bonnie explain her psychic powers and stuff in a way a best friend would, where she's like, yeah, I mean, if you think you're having visions, why not? That crazier things have happened. I think my boyfriend's a vampire, so I fear nothing will ever top the feather moment. That's just such, it's so special, so good. Ayana has such a sweet, like genuine, like, oh my god, my best friend's a witch reaction, which I will never not die over. And then the fact that Bonnie is like having fun with her power. There are so few and far between moments where Bonnie is just having fun being a witch and her magic is cool and special to her. So I hold all of those close to my heart. Like that's what I wanted for her, and we only got it a couple times. We get another one in season 3 where Bonnie lights the birthday candles and Ayana is the one that's standing next to her and she's like, oh, nice. She is a girl's girl in those moments. At least she's the bestie that thinks her magic is cool. Also, at least in the beginning, Ayana does try really hard to stop Bonnie from hurting herself for others. When the whole Klaus thing starts going down and Bonnie makes the decision to like channel all of her new magic, therefore killing herself to kill Klaus and save Ayana, Elena's like, I think the hell not. We will not be doing that. There's gotta be another way. And so it's disappointing that like later on she just sort of goes along with everybody and is like, yeah, I guess Bonnie can handle it. Why not? We'll just let her risk her life again. The only reason she gives in season 2 though is because Bonnie hits her with, if the situation was reversed, would you do it for me? And Ayana would. Like at the end of the day, the two of them in the beginning at least have like such a genuine, strong bond with each other that we know that that's true. Ayana would die for Bonnie, I think, at least in the beginning. The scene of Ayana screaming through the glass door, trying to stop Bonnie from hurting herself while she's fighting Klaus will never not be just so emotional, even if they are in silly little 60s dresses while it's happening. God, the way she cries over her in that scene. And then when she finds out that it was fake and they were just tricking her so that it would look real, oh my god. The slap to Damon because he's being so awful about the whole thing. When they cry together over the little MiFi ad placement. Yes, that's friendship. It disappoints me that then we have moments like in season 6 where Damon and Bonnie both disappear at the same time and Ayana is only really distraught and broken up about Damon. We only really see her starting to express sadness over Bonnie being gone once her memories of Damon have been taken away. So she's trying to relate to Stefan by being like, oh, I know, I'm so sad Bonnie's gone and your brother died. I don't know if we were supposed to feel like everybody was just used to her being gone at that point, so like why would they care that it happened again? But like if that's becoming a pattern for your characters, I think it's time to stop killing her. Are you serious? I kind of like when Bonnie flips on Ayana during the expression arc while her humanity's off because somebody needed to do it. She was turning into a raging psycho. That's also the beginning of like Bonnie's issues with the humanity off stuff with the vampires because she stops viewing Ayana as Ayana, right? Like it gets so bad that she's like, that's not my best friend anymore. And she's so overrun with the expression magic that she absolutely would have killed her outside prom had Stefan not jumped in and stopped her. We all better be glad that Ayana tells her that the Sleeping Beauty spell isn't her fault, because Bonnie apologizing with tears streaming down her face for Kai being insane, Girl, I love him, but he is just a man throwing a tantrum. So in the beginning, like I mentioned, Bonnie and Elena kind of pick on Caroline, and she's sort of like the outlier of the trio. But Bonnie also has some solo scenes where she's like comforting Caroline and like talking her through her boy drama and taking care of her while she's drunk. And it just ends up feeling like Bonnie is literally the caretaker friend to everyone, and they're never that genuine to her in return. Or in the case of Caroline, it's way too little too late. Caroline also has the opposite reaction to finding out that Bonnie's a witch, while Elena is like, wow, that's so cool, really? Caroline's like, yeah, sure, Bonnie. Now you're crazy just like your Grams? She blows her off. She's like giggling about it. There's multiple moments where like Bonnie will be talking about it and Caroline will just be like, oh, ha 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 ha, like looking off screen, waiting for Bonnie to stop talking so she can bring the conversation back to herself. She never takes it seriously. After Caroline transitions and starts, you know, eating people, Bonnie's like, huh, wow. It seems like maybe I need to take a step back because my entire life is suddenly being overrun by vampires and I'm not sure I can handle it right now. And everyone is just like, oh, so you're a shit friend? You don't care about Caroline because she ate one guy that smiled at you, Bonnie? As much as their friendship develops, I never really get the feeling like Caroline accepts or understands Bonnie's magic the way that Elena does. It just doesn't feel like she makes the effort to really get a grasp on like what that means to Bonnie. And it always kind of feels like she treats it like a game or like a fancy toy, which tracks because then with Josie and Lizzie, in the beginning at least, she does a pretty bad job of like raising them correctly with magic and like teaching them about their power, because she never took the time to like pay attention and learn. It's Caroline's idea to do the seance to talk to Emily, which does make sense to me because she does give off the energy of like the little kid that would find a Ouija board in her attic and then like bring it to the sleepover. Maybe this is just a me thing, but in season 3, when Bonnie's doing a spell in the witch house and she accidentally like summons Grams and Grams is suddenly like in front of her holding her hands, Caroline goes, oh my God, is that your... And Bonnie says Grams like excitedly and then they hug and do the spell together. Probably that was just for audience benefit. Like maybe we forgot what Grams looks like and we're just being reminded. But it feels like Caroline's not completely sure who this woman that just showed up is. I do want to mention that the scene where Bonnie like makes the flower grow in Abby's garden, that happens in season 3 as well, and Caroline is with her for that, and she does smile and like appreciate what Bonnie's doing. So it's not like she's completely tone deaf all the time. It's just that like the writing, y'all, the inconsistencies are crazy. Since Caroline's emotions are off in season 6 when Bonnie comes back from 94, we don't get an emotional reunion with them, and that doesn't really get fixed. We sort of just gloss over the fact that Liz died while Bonnie was gone. They should talk about that more. Maybe Bonnie should go to the grave site. Like, they had a relationship with her. That was a thing. Everybody loved her, and Bonnie's the only one that doesn't really get to like mourn that loss. I do love the scene though where Bonnie comes back as the anchor and Elena and Caroline see her again for the first time, because it's like instant trio tears amongst the three of them. They all jump on her and start hugging, and Caroline immediately pulls away and is like, oh my God, and we can be roommates, which for her character, it's one of the most genuine, sweet moments in the show because she's neurotic as hell, okay? So while they're excited to see Bonnie and they're excited that she's back, her brain is already going like, oh my God, the dorm room can be fixed now. We can have the three of us. We won't have to have a shitty roommate. And then in season 6, she also insists that Caroline and Elena get the better goodbye because she knows that she's gonna see Elena again. And there's something a little sad there, right? That she recognizes on some level that they have a stronger relationship than what she has with either one of them. And then what happens to them in season 8? It's just so bad. It's an awful position to be in because they lose Elena, and so then by default they become best friends. Like they don't have anybody else to go to. The trio's broken up, so they can either rely on each other or be alone. And then Caroline's boyfriend rips Bonnie's boyfriend's heart out. And it can't be loophole fixed this time. There's no bringing him back. He's just gone. So we have to watch Bonnie self-isolate again and deal with all this grief on her own because the only person she can still go to reminds her of the pain. And then Bonnie still comes back into her life, puts all her own pain aside and is like, listen, I don't even want to talk about it right now, Caroline. Let's just focus on you, because you deserve the wedding you've always dreamed about, and I want to help you get it. Even before that, though, when Enzo is like taken by the sirens and Bonnie is spiraling and feeling alone, no one cares. That fight that they have in the hallway where Caroline is like, oh, so you risked our plan and didn't even get him back? Wow, way to be selfish, Bonnie. We needed you here. Just pisses me off. It leads to Bonnie yelling at her finally. And this is one of the only scenes where Bonnie really rips into somebody in any kind of meaningful way, telling them that they have hurt her and what they've done is problematic. Initially, Caroline just kind of doubles down and is like, oh my God, are you trying to tell me that you're jealous? Like, me and Stefan being happy upsets you that much? Wow, Bonnie, you're a great friend. Jesus Christ. But Bonnie explains that, like, yeah, she is jealous because her happy ending has been taken away again and no one seems to give a shit. And she's watching Caroline have a loving boyfriend, have a family, and that's all Bonnie wanted. She had Enzo. She thought she was going to be able to grow old with him and come home to him every night. That was her whole plan. That was all she wanted, and it's gone. And now she feels so alone in the middle of all of it that she wants to die. Thankfully, that language finally snaps Caroline out of it, and she's kind of instantly like, oh my God, you're right. I'm horrible. I'm so sorry. I'm really glad Kat made the decision to scoff when Caroline says, like, you're not alone, Bonnie Bennett, because, like, she is. She is, and we all know it. And it's so too little too late in this moment with Caroline. It could have been meaningful, but given that this is just the most recent incident in such a long list of incidents, I just don't care. I don't believe you. You might be a better friend for, like, a month, but it's not gonna last. Caroline out loud admits that she never even considered how badly Enzo disappearing and being taken by the sirens would affect Bonnie. I'm sorry, you didn't contemplate that losing the only guy she's ever had a super long-term intense relationship with would maybe be upsetting for her. That never crossed your mind, Caroline. Are you serious? And then the fact that Bonnie not only helps but goes to the wedding after Stefan has killed Enzo. You're joking. Like, I cannot believe that she had to sit there in that audience and watch Caroline get married to him. And they try to make it this, like, beautiful friendship moment where in the fight initially, Caroline is like, I want to be part of your happiness and we're going to get our happiness together. We're going to make sure that each other gets what they want. Bonnie's happiness falls apart, so she shows up to the wedding anyway and is like, I still want to be part of your happiness, Caroline, always. No. Now look, my feelings for Ratty Matty aside, he should have died somewhere in the middle, okay? There was no reason for him to make it to Legacies. That's insane. But their friendship makes so much sense to me, and I wish we saw more of it. I love that Matt trusts her. Like in season 6, where she's having her little freak out and everybody else is like, Bonnie, you really need to calm down. You're kind of overreacting, okay? Nothing's gonna happen. Matt's like, oh no, something's totally gonna happen. If you feel like something's gonna happen, Bonnie, absolutely, I trust you. You're never wrong. That's the kind of friendship loyalty I expected from all of them, and he is the only one that gives it to us consistently. It's not like she has psychic abilities and has been saving all of you for seasons anyway. And then in the Reyna arc too, he's the one that, like, goes with her and offers to help. I mean, she does crash the car and leave him stuck in the wreckage, but the sentiment was there, and it was a nice moment before that happened. They get a little funky towards the end where it's like, who are we gonna put Bonnie with? Matt? Could we put Bonnie with Matt since we had his wife die in a really traumatic, awful way? Maybe. Thankfully, they don't. They have, like, one sort of weird, flirty, should we go on a date moment? No. No, you shouldn't, okay? Don't ever joke about that. Like I mentioned in Beatrice's section, the fact that the Maxwells and the Bennetts have, like, ancestral ties to each other, it opened the door for some really interesting family connections. It all comes together right at the end of the show, so in the hands of better writers, we would have maybe had more hints of that throughout it, because what ends up happening is they just sort of, like, crammed it together right at the end and we're like, see, it makes sense. It could have made better sense. It could have been more interesting and compelling, but their early days scenes do kind of unfortunately boil down to, like, Bonnie looking after Matt, but he's one of the only characters that as the show progresses has moments of also looking out for her and like checking on her without wanting anything in return. I have to appreciate that in him because it doesn't happen with like anybody else. They just have a lot of like warmth to their scenes, and their friendship feels really like innocent and genuine. I feel really similarly about Elena and Tyler. The non-romantic relationships are just really interesting sometimes, and I feel like the actors really did a lot with like the little brief interactions we get, right? Because there's nothing between Tyler and Elena romantically, and there shouldn't be anything romantic between Matt and Bonnie. Like, they tried for a hot second, but it's not there. But they also didn't give them like sibling vibes. So they just have like really strong friendships that I just love seeing on screen. I think representation of those kind of relationships is few and far between, and it's nice to see them. Bonnie is the one that helps Matt with Vicky in season 3, and that's such an emotional time for Matt, and I love that it's Bonnie that deals with it with him. And it's one of those times where Bonnie helping with her magic feels really meaningful, and it really reinforces that they can go to each other for comfort and moral support without judgment. Considering Vicky is lingering because of Matt, and she's terrorizing the town because he won't let go of her. Bonnie could very easily be like, Matt, you're being a freaking idiot, but she recognizes that like he loves his sister at the end of the day. Of course he doesn't want to let go of her. Stefan is such a missed opportunity, okay? His friendship with Bonnie in the beginning of the show has the potential to be so special, and it dissolves into just one of the most awful character assassinations in the whole show. There are a lot of moments in the beginning seasons where Stefan is like offering comfort to Bonnie or looking out for her, kind of partially because of his promise to Grams, but I think also because they just get along. There's an understanding there between them that makes sense. There's even a deleted scene where Stefan says that, you know, I kind of thought you were gonna accept me better given the fact that you're a witch. And that's when she opens up to him about being scared, not only of him, but of herself and her own power. And we never really touch on that. I just feel like with the way that they're written in the beginning and the level of like connection that they seem to be forming with each other, it would have made more sense for Bonnie and Stefan to have a thing instead of Caroline. Like, okay, Bonnie is the one that sees him first at the school when he's being all Edward Cullen in the office. Also, a thing that they totally lucked out on is that like while she's looking at him, she's like pretending to use her psychic abilities, and she's like, I bet he can play guitar. Girl, he can't, but you know who can? Stefan so often is with Bonnie when he isn't with Elena in the beginning, and then he's actively avoiding Caroline. And I know they have a whole like kind of slightly enemies to friends to lovers things going, but he's friends with Bonnie in the beginning, and they have like an instant easy connection to their friendship. And they do undercut it by giving him moments like when she's doing the spell to like help him with Elena, and she says like, oh my god, something's wrong, and he immediately is like, with Elena? Okay, way to show where your priorities lie, Stefan, Jesus. But I swear most of the time he's really attentive and paying attention to her inside the friend group. And that's pretty obvious because nobody else is doing it. In season 2, when it comes down to either letting Jenna die or letting Bonnie stop the ritual, therefore dying by using all her magic, Stefan's like, nope, secret third option, I'm offering myself. That doesn't work out, but he does attempt to do it. Given that we have things like his past connection with Grams and the fact that he seems to have like a genuine respect for witches, I just feel like their friendship had the space to really grow and turn into something really strong, even if they were never going to be romantic. But instead, they have him kill Enzo and just ruin any chance of her ever really accepting him back into her life. Like, I don't think she's forgiven him by the time he dies in the Hellfire. Which honestly also sucks for Bonnie because it means that she's going forward with the added grief of having never like reconciled with him before he died. I hate the fact that he's so up her ass in season 8 too after killing Enzo, where he's like insisting that she's #1 on his apology tour. I'm like, buddy, the fact that a literal sociopath had more respect for her wishes on leaving her alone than you do right now, are you kidding me? Because there's also a deleted scene in season 8 of him forcing a conversation with Bonnie. Like, she's in her self-isolating era and he sees her and parks his car and gets out and follows her and then insists that she hears him out and listens to him even though she has headphones on and she does not want to talk. And he has a little moody boy moment where he's like, you know,
I used to do this too. I hid from everyone and bottled up my pain, and it didn't do any good, Bonnie.
He tells her that she's not going to feel any better doing this, and what she really needs is her friends around her to witness her grief, because sharing our grief is what makes and keeps us human. Be so for real right now. I want to slap every single person in the writer's room right in the mouth.
Y'all better be glad
They didn't put this in the show, because my hatred for Stefan was already going through the roof by season 8. But if he said that to me, oh my God, my boy, you killed her boyfriend and you are dating her only other living best friend. She can't be around anyone in her whole life because of you and your idiot brother. Just leave town, babe, I beg of you. And how dare you say she needs to grieve around others? Where have any of you been for the past 7 seasons? Are you joking? That's just so unbelievably tone deaf from the writers, and also just like mean. Like, no shit, she needs her friends around her. If you thought her friendships were bad and disappointing, let's get into her love life. Her love interest across the board, y'all, bad. Including Enzo. I've said before that I don't like when they write intimate scenes with characters that are minors, played by actors that aren't minors to like make it okay, but this is a teenage romance show, okay? Like, that's what you're signing up for when you watch a show like this. However, Bonnie gets nothing. We get like 1 or 2 scenes of her and Jeremy sort of half hooking up before dead people show up and ruin it. It starts to feel really ridiculous because they get interrupted multiple times by dead people coming to her since she's the anchor, and then like the vibes are ruined. She's not having sex with you now, Jeremy, you might as well go to bed. And then all the way at the end of the show, we get a couch makeout with Enzo. And I just, what do you mean? What do you mean she's one of the 3 main girls and there's just no scenes of her happy, healthy, and in love? Like, we get the Bonenzo movie at the end, right? It's not enough. It's not enough for me. I'm not satisfied. In season 6, when they're in the prison world, Bonnie like says to Damon that Kai's being like really weird with her, and Damon says, oh, you're just not used to guys hitting on you. And you know what? She's not, which is crazy, crazy. Because what are we talking about, right? Like, not only is she stunning, okay, she was prom queen. She was prom queen. And you're telling me that boys didn't like her in high school? We gotta touch on the fact that there's this weird thing with the creative team where they like insisted that Bonnie was like too good to be with one of the bad boys. So that's why nothing ever happens there. That's why she has so few love interests, because nobody's good enough for Bonnie. And then they make her BFFs with Damon and she falls in love with Enzo. Do they or do they not eat people? I mean, either you guys were lying through your teeth trying to pretend like she's Miss Goody Two-Shoes that could never fall for somebody bad, or you just forgot all the awful shit those two did, because I have it on tape. And it's so gross to me that there's this weird double standard where Bonnie's concerned, because at the same time that they're out here being like, we have to take care of Bonnie, she's so sweet and innocent, she can't be put with anybody who could morally corrupt her, you've got Elena sire bonded to a psychopath, and Caroline's having sex with the guy who killed Tyler's mom out in the woods. So they're allowed to like play with and give in to their darker natures, but God forbid Bonnie ever do that. There are consequences to her actions. And that's made even more ridiculous by the fact that they do a whole arc where she dabbles in dark magic and expression. You showed me that she has a dark side, but now I'm supposed to believe that when people come along that like remind her of it or amplify those feelings in her, she just doesn't want anything to do with them. Sure. Also, did we all just collectively forget early days Bond when her magic started manifesting? She was always ready to go straight to the kill in a fight, and it was people like Elena and Stefan stopping her and being like, oh my God, Bonnie, we don't do this, that's not who we are. Like, that might not be who you two are, but this woman would kill a man if she needed to. She's not even gonna apologize. I think it's a huge deal to most of us that Kai is the first person that she kills in season 6, but in no way is he the first person she attempts to kill. That's just the first murder that works out for her. I simply did not forget that she almost blew up the car wash because that girl Tiki made her sweep the parking lot. I'm not saying that I wanted her to go completely to the dark side and like become a villain. Like, that I don't think makes sense for Bonnie's character, but it does seem like they set her up very easily to become become somebody who's super ruthless when it comes to her magic. Denying the fact that she has a darker side when you have already shown it to me just feels so stupid. You can try to pretend like she's Miss Goody Two-Shoes now, but she's just not. That's not her character. And it feels like you're just erasing things about her to make her fit a narrative that you seem to like. Like, she is a badass witch and she deserved somebody who matched her freak. And you had her out here with just a parade of lame ass men. Like, this list that we're about to go over is so stupid, okay? Let's get into it. Problem number 1, Ben. He peaked in high school. He was a football player that she thought was cute, and then they flirt in the grill. He's lying the whole time. He's with Anna already. And you know who Anna is? The girl who Jeremy later cheats on Bonnie with. Like, then we have Carter. He's a sweet older guy who flirts with Bonnie at the carnival. Cannot emphasize enough that he is down bad the second he sees Bonnie, okay? He's like, what do you need help with? I will help you. Tell me. Take my arm. Let's go. Before she can so much as hold hands with him, Caroline eats him. And then they get mad at Bonnie being upset about this. Because like, oh my God, Caroline didn't mean to. She's a newbie vampire. What did you expect? She does take some of her grief out over his death on Damon here because she had told Damon that if anything else happened to anybody, she would kill him. So she gives him an aneurysm, turns the hose on, soaks Damon, and then lights the water on fire. Yeah, she almost killed him. Elena convinces her not to, but she was absolutely gonna do it. Oof, this one hurts me because I have seen clips of him saying, like, if he could change anything about Jeremy, it would be the crimes against Bonnie. And like, good for him, because it was stupid. It was stupid. There was no point. Her relationship with Jeremy has the potential to be really cute. Maybe it's just because I have a best friend who is married to my brother now, but like, that's a cute concept of her like not really viewing Jeremy that way and then all of a sudden being like, wait, he's really kind of cute and really sweet. Like, when did this happen? And then finding out that like he had a crush on her but never thought anything would happen. That's cute. Like, conceptually, that's precious. I can even look past the fact that there's not even so much as a hint of it in season 1 because you can write it off as Jeremy thinking, oh, well, I never had a chance with her, so why even try? It is unfortunately just a pair the spare moment, but if you squint, it's like not the worst thing they've done. And they end up writing him to be one of the only people that like pays attention to Bonnie and notices when her magic is hurting her and when she's giving too much of herself and tries to keep her from doing that. A big part of their relationship boils down to Jeremy being like, you cannot keep doing this. Like, I don't want to see you get hurt. Don't hurt yourself for me. And Bonnie being like, it's what I do. This is my job. And Jeremy being like, no, your job is to be Bonnie. Like, we don't need you to do this every time. His reaction is so funny when she's like, I wasn't given these powers to float feathers or blow out candles. He's like, girl, you weren't given them to die for Elena either, so jot that down in your grimoire. He's also, like Elena, one of the only ones to be like, oh my God, being a witch is so freaking cool. Like, you have magical powers, Bonnie. That's amazing. Even when she's nervous and still a little scared, he's one of the ones that's like encouraging her to grow and like looking into her family history with her. There's a scene at the masquerade ball in season 2 where they unload their gear from a duffel bag together and he pulls out like a crossbow while she's pulling out a grimoire, and it's giving power couple energy, okay? It was there. That could have worked for me. They got a couple cute moments in the early days of them flirting where like they get caught staring at each other and we get to see him being like, oh my God, Bonnie's so pretty. She's smiling at me. And I'm always down for that. Like, anytime the men in the show are admitting how beautiful she is, I'm watching, I'm paying attention. The almost kiss after Stefan gets trapped in the tomb and she's all mad at him and then like he ends up like holding her face in the hallway and they almost kiss and she's like, we can't. When he tries to give her his Gilbert ring before she goes after Klaus and she has to explain to him that it won't work because she's already a supernatural. Oh God. There's just something there that had the potential to be really charming and sweet. That being said, do I like Jeremy? No. I don't think they had a lot of chemistry and there's not enough payoff for me to put up with all the things he does. Because they go and take this sweet, fairly precious relationship that they're building and ruin it by having him cheat on her multiple times. And you know, for a teenage romantic drama, that plotline is like never used. No one else gets cheated on. Bonnie is the only girl that gets cheated on in the whole show, and it happens more than once with the same idiot boy. Damon and Stefan both have like hookups with Rebecca out of spite. And we have that weird plot line where like Caroline thinks maybe Tyler cheated with Haley, but he didn't. At the same time that he's being a freaking idiot and acting like a child, we also see Jeremy break down multiple times. And he really struggles on screen with losing Bonnie in a way that like no one else does in the whole show. But it does feel out of place sometimes because he'll be having a meltdown over it and everybody else will have suddenly moved on, and so they're almost like picking on him and being like, Jeremy, you really need to get it together. Bonnie's been gone for a whole 7 days. And it's cheapened by the fact that he cheated on her. Like, how much did you care about her, babe? You were hooking up with your ghost girlfriends pretty freaking quick, if you ask me. It's really crazy to me that they're still technically a thing by the time we get to season 6. He's so hurt by losing her again that time that he's slipping right back into like early seasons Jeremy and dealing with his addictions again. And then he goes out of his way to work with Kai. He risks his life by going in the spell again, even though he knows that they might get stuck, because it's more important to him to stop Bonnie from hurting herself than it is for him to be okay. I don't think he ever really recovers from the fact that she gives up her life for him, so he spends the rest of his time like dealing with that and trying to like protect her. And then we just never get closure, because after all of that with Kai and saving her and making sure she's okay, he just leaves. And Elena thinks she convinces him to like go start a new life, but in reality he's like going and becoming a hunter. But he just doesn't come back when Bonnie gets back to town after making the point to be like, hey, call me the second she gets back, okay? Implying that he's planning on returning home the moment she's back to town. Why even include that? I just feel like there should have been a better way to do that, because what ends up happening is Bonnie comes home and she calls him and she's like, hey, I'm wildly different now. I've been so traumatized that I no longer feel like myself. Don't come home. I don't want to see you. We need to work on our issues separately. And we never even hear him be like, okay, Bonnie, that makes sense. I'm a hunter now, so I get where you're coming from. Maybe we just don't make sense and we should go back to being friends. I guess that's what happened, but nobody showed it to me on screen, so I have no proof for you. Now, Luca was an amazing option for her, but he was also lying to her the entire time, and their relationship isn't real. It's based off him using her to get information for his dad. And we do get to see Luca struggling with that fact. He complains to his dad multiple times because he really believes that if they just told Bonnie what was going on, she would want to help them and they don't need to be lying to her. There's even a moment at the grill where like when Bonnie meets up with Luca and Jonas accidentally, Jonas is like, why don't you join us and sit with us? And he insists that like Luca scoots over so that they're gonna share a booth because he's trying to get Luca to flirt with her. And Luca wasn't gonna do that. Like he has a moment of being like, oh, right, and like moves over for Bonnie so she can sit with him. And I hate that he's lying to her, right? Because there's so many moments that are really precious, like when he does the little like salt floating spell to show her he's a witch, or when he teaches her to channel for the first time and it's this really like special experience for her because she's never done it before. She also doesn't fully trust him, so it's not like he's getting away completely with the manipulation. She ends up like trying to sneakily channel him because she doesn't want to tell him everything about what's going on with the vampires, not realizing that he already knows. And he almost dies letting her do that to him. Like he doesn't tell Jonas what's going on until he is so incapacitated by the pain that he can't hide it anymore. It results in a funny moment where he's like, do not ever do that again. I forgive you though, come inside so I can tell you about all the lore that my dad has in the closet. Don't worry, my guy. She will get karma for that in the worst way possible. Just give it a couple years. We get rid of him way too fast, especially given the fact that there was potential here for Bonnie to have a witch partner that she could grow in her magic with. At this point, Grams is gone. There's nobody else that stepped in to be like a mentor to her, and Jonas was right there. Like we find out through Luca that his dad kind of spends time gathering grimoires from covens that have been like lost to time because he feels like all witches are connected and like all share the same coven at the end of the day. And once they're gone, there's this moment where they come back into the apartment and find Luca's dead body, and Bonnie says like, we really need to take these grimoires and like make sure we put them somewhere safe because I don't want all of this to get lost. And I just hate that we lose that for her, because again, it was a way for her character to grow outside of just being a plot device for everybody else. Any romantic stuff going on with them burns out real quick, because the second Bonnie figures out that he's working behind her back and him and his dad are kind of on board with Elena getting hurt, she completely turns on him. The scene where they kidnap him and she like head dives on him to get information out because he's afraid to tell everybody and maybe get his sister in more trouble is such a good scene. And then he still kind of wants to work with her after that, so you just can't tell me this boy wasn't down bad. I wish I was kidding. Remember when I mentioned Abby having an adoptive son named Jamie? You're probably thinking, Sarah, shouldn't he be in the friendship category? I wish. While him and Bonnie are interacting and talking about Abby and hanging out in the house that Abby moved to after leaving Bonnie behind and starting over, she has weird flirty undertones with her adoptive brother. That's just so stupid and pointless and gross. This didn't go anywhere. But oh my god, I wish it had. Especially knowing now that like once upon a time, Cole was the one that was obsessed with magic in the family. Please, that's incredible. He has a history of starting up friendships and relationships with witches across the years because he's always drawn to magic even once the family transitions and becomes vampires. He continuously seeks out witches and like infiltrates covens and builds his own little groups as the decades go on. He goes so far to like figure out a different way of doing it so that he can still be a part of it while he's not actually got magic anymore as a vampire. I know a lot of you guys ship her with Klaus. I'm sorry. I just think at the end of the day, Bonnie and I prefer brunettes. So if you're gonna dangle a Michelson-Bennett relationship in front of me, I'm gonna go with the little brother. Like when she brings him to his knees in the hallway after he tries to bite her, oh my god, and the balloons are like popping while he's screaming, and then when she gets away from him, he like falls forward while reaching for her. Yeah. Then we do have that moment like where he's on the other side freaking out about death because we know that like Cole's biggest fear is actually being dead. And they have a moment where it feels like maybe they're like genuinely connecting a little bit. In another life, something happened there, okay? Now look, while this is never 100% romantic, he is absolutely exhibiting grooming behavior, and so I put him on the list. The undertones were there and I didn't like it. She thinks of him as a friend or mentor at first and is very insistent that nothing else is going on, but she's definitely drawn to him because he has a lot of information about the occult. He's taken over Grams's position at Whitmore, so she feels like a connection to him because he knows a lot of the same stuff that Grams knew, and he shares a lot with her because he's grooming her and manipulating her, okay? But she feels like they have a connection. Even the other girls pick on her about it, okay? Caroline, thankfully, is like, it's weird and I don't like it. I'm glad she said it because we were all thinking it. Because of how much Bonnie's been through leading up to this moment and the fact that Shane like helps her figure out expression and she starts like getting power back even though it's not her traditional magic, it's easy to see why she gets sucked in with him and why so much goes wrong, but it sucks to watch it play out and nobody stops it from happening. Like her parents try to, but she's too strong. By the time they get involved, she can't be stopped. He kind of diminishes the whole expression arc too, because on one hand, Bonnie's like exploring this new side to her power and she feels like it's very empowering. Like she's got this new skill that she can use and she can kind of do her own thing outside of the spirits. But at the end of the day, Shane's manipulating her. So it's not even really her choices that she's making. He's kind of pulling the strings and he ties himself to her expression. So she feels like he's the only one that can control her in those moments. So once again, her power is being taken from her and given to somebody else. He also picks on her about Grams and makes a big deal about how it's her fault and she should feel guilty that the spirits are punishing Grams because she can't learn to control herself. You're controlling her, asshole. Like, she should have crushed more than his hand, okay? He does die slowly and painfully in the end, though, so that is good for me. Just like Klaus, I have a really hard time shipping Bonnie and Damon together as a romantic couple. It's hard for me to ship them as friends, you know? And I think I've talked about this before where like the first time I watched the show, I was extremely anti-Damon, like completely like did not want it at all. When I did my recaps with you guys and we were kind of engaging in the comments and stuff, there was more stuff that y'all pointed out to me that I could see and kind of like hear you out on. But at the end of the day, for me, they just don't really work romantically, and I don't think I would ever have been okay with that given how they were written in canon. There's a lot with characters like Damon and Tyler specifically that you sort of have to just forget about from the early seasons, because if you bring it with you into the rest of the show, it ruins so much of them. Damon stays sexually assaulting women, okay? I don't want a man like that dating Bonnie. Like, no, she deserves so much better than Damon. I don't want him near any of the girls. Get him in jail. And where Bonnie's concerned, her relationship with Damon in the beginning is very antagonistic. Like, he is so mean and scary to her in the beginning, and she's afraid of him because in the early seasons, she's not super capable of fighting back yet. Her power grows and she starts pushing back against him. But in the beginning, she's just terrified and she doesn't know how to fight him because he's a decades-old vampire. And no matter how they grow as friends, it doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, he's the reason why her mother is a vampire and her grandmother is dead. In the beginning of the show, she makes Jeremy promise that he won't tell anybody that overusing her magic like really weakens her, specifically because she doesn't want Damon to find out and use that against her. He knows that she's gonna die if he goes after Klaus, and he's essentially just like, cool, that's on you, Bond. Thanks for doing that to save my friends. I don't really care. He even gets pissy when Stefan confronts him about it. Like, it's not Damon's idea to go back and do a different plan. He was gonna just let Bonnie die and be like, oh no, she died. I know that they're faking it to make Elena more upset, but when he comes into that room and is like, Stefan, get Elena out of here. I'll get rid of the body. The body? How dare you? That is Bonnie. On that note though, I do love the scene where they rock up to the ritual together and she attacks Klaus while he kills Greta. Sometimes they work. It also really disappoints me that we spend seasons of the show watching Damon flirt with like any woman that comes within 300 feet of Mystic Falls. Never really pays any attention to Bonnie until season 6 when there's suddenly like a new challenger in the ring and he's like, how dare you, that's mine. They don't start getting close until the Prison World arc, which is disappointing in itself because that means that like Damon and Enzo, the only reason anything really happens with her and them is because they are slammed together in a forced proximity situation. Like organically, that probably never would have happened if they were just out and about in the real world. To the point where even Elena is like, damn, Damon and Bonnie, who saw that coming? Not me, girl, not me. As mad as he can make me, I don't fault Damon for the fact that when Bonnie sends him out of the prison world and stays behind, he tells everybody like, oh yes, she found peace, like, and implies that she's dead because he thought she was dead. Like, that he left the prison world in that moment thinking she was gonna die. But at the same time, he is lying to save his own skin because he can't help being selfish, and he knows that if he tells them the truth about what happened, they'll be resentful that she saved him. So instead, he's just like, no, Bonnie found peace and she was never there with me and we were never together, and is just gonna lie about the fact that they spent months together becoming friends. He's just gonna die with that secret, I guess. And the second he finds out, when she sends him the bear, he starts trying to get her back. Problem arises there though, because if that was anybody else stuck in that prison world with Kai, they'd have been out in a week tops, okay? The gang would have been kidnapping people, blackmailing witches, just straight up causing chaos to get whoever it was out, and it takes them months and Kai, who supposedly hates her, to get her out in the end. And he really loses me after she's finally out, because he is the only one that has an appropriate reaction to her coming home from the prison world. That hug in the kitchen, I see it. I understand. It's so cute. But then he sort of immediately watches her depression spiral, and instead of being helpful in any way, he just manipulates those feelings and uses them against her and sets up one of the stupidest plots in the show. Like, Damon knows that if he lets her kill Kai, Joe will also die, along with Rick's unborn children. That's your best friend, my guy, and you are instigating a situation where the love of his life and his unborn children, let me say that again, could die, and you don't care. You don't care about the ramifications on what that's gonna do to Bonnie. There's no world where immediately upon killing Kai, she doesn't regret that decision. The second her knife made contact with his heart and the coven goes down, Bonnie would have self-imploded. Damon doesn't care. Doesn't think it through that hard, right? He needs something, so he's gonna be selfish and get it no matter the ramifications to the people that are supposedly the most important ones to him in the whole show. In so many ways, season 6 Damon is my favorite Damon and my least favorite Damon all rolled into one, because the beginning half of the season, I'm in his corner, all right? He's gone through so much. We're right there together. I'm seeing it. And at the red wedding, right? Like the fact that he wants to take the cure with Elena and he's softened into that and all of this growth has happened for him and now he's here. Ignoring the mistreatment of Bonnie, right? You can see where he's gotten to where he needs to be and he's gonna be a better man now. Out the window immediately in the back half of season 6 and into season 7 and 8. Who is that man? Get him off my screen. Why are we back to season 1? I just can't put him with Bonnie happily, okay? Like he's not gonna be good to her. I don't trust him to take care of himself, let alone Bonnie Bennett, all right? And it's awful because at the end of the day, Bonnie saves Damon in a way that he always thought Elena was gonna save him, okay? All the things where he's like, you make me want to be better, you make me a better man, you changed me, Elena. No, sir, she really didn't, because you were doing all the same behaviors again and again and again, okay? Bonnie, though, made you better. And is it annoying that that's just kind of her whole character trope? Yeah, but it's the truth, okay? Like, Damon changed with her in a way that he didn't do with Elena. There's so many moments that I do love, like when he says to Elena, I'm doing this for Bonnie, not you. The jokes on the porch about her having a poor sense of direction. When he's visiting her room at school and he calls her phone to hear her voice and leaves a message on it. Good God. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between his relationship with Bonnie and his relationship with Rose. There just seems to be this like tender understanding between them that could have been really profound and meaningful, but it's fumbled. Because then when we get into season 7 and 8, he's literally contemplating killing her to get Elena back. And it's so stupid, okay? Because like, my man, you waited over 100 years for Catherine to come back, okay? You're telling me that you can't suffer through 60 years of friendship with Bonnie or date her. Fall in love with Bonnie, date her for a little while, and then when Elena wakes up, you can do it again with her. You get 2 wives. You are the only person in existence where that situation happens to and could work out in your favor, and you still manage to ruin it. It's so lazy because he had worked through so much of his selfishness and then they just backslide it immediately and make him act like that again. And the plot line itself opens up Bonnie's character to more hatred from the fans because now all of a sudden she's the only reason why Damon and Elena aren't together. And the writers are gonna remind you of that fact over and over and over again. So while you're looking at Bonnie on your screen, all you're going to be thinking is, if you weren't here, Elena would be here. That's so infuriating when they could have just made it a non-issue and had them work through it and then move on like adults. But no, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I've gone over this again and again and again. If you need refreshers on how I feel about them, feel free to go watch my season 6 recap or my character ranking video or my TVD ship ranking video. But like, I like that they fight. I like that it's antagonistic. I like enemies to lovers, all right? That's what I want. Sue me. Yes, Bonnie gets hurt. Sometimes he goes too far with it. She kills him twice. The fact that they challenge each other and match each other in a very intense way is refreshing. They bring out the best and the worst in each other, and I think if given the chance, the relationship between the two of them could have been infinitely better than everything we had going on with Damon and Elena and Klaus and Caroline. Because whether you ship them or not, like, you can't ignore the fact that, like, narratively, Kai was put into the show for Bonnie. Like, he was her villain. That's the whole point of him being there. And I, for one, didn't want him to soften into like a goody two-shoes witchy boyfriend. That's not what I was signing up for, my guy. Given his background, that just wouldn't make sense for him. And I think it would have been really weird and cheap to have him just suddenly like about face and be perfect just to get her with him. Cause I don't think that's why Bonnie liked him. Right? Like, that's not what she wanted from him either. By season 6, though, she deserved somebody that would have burned the world down for her. Those anti-magic pills would not have happened on his watch, and he certainly would not have encouraged her to forgive his murderer. And being with him would have really opened the door for her darker side. He also comes with an entire coven, okay? So had they just reconciled, there's an option for Bonnie to become a Gemini and, you know, grow connections inside a witch community again. But sure, why not just kill all of them and take that from her completely? Sure. Oh, God. To me, this relationship just feels like watered down Bankai, and I don't know how to view it any other way. There are so many scenes with him where suddenly his backstory, the way he feels about his family, the way he was treated by his family, we're getting all this info about him that if you just like changed the names, you could just put Kai in those situations instead. That's so lazy. This man was a full-on enemy to the entire Mystic Falls gang, not just Bonnie. My man was eating people while working on missions with them. In no way is he a good vampire. The only reason why he changes his ways is because he starts dating Bonnie. He softened a little bit for Caroline back when we thought he was gonna end up with her, but he was still eating people. And then he ends up going right back to his old self and turning on them during the Armory plotline because he feels like he's got his family back and he needs to pick the St. John's over the Mystic Falls people because they never really gave him a chance. So we don't even really get to watch them properly fall for each other, start a relationship, and end up together because it happens during the time skip, and all we get to see are a handful of flashbacks that when you put them together, tell the story of their relationship. But it's not like it's organically just happening in the show and we get to watch it. The fact that it's essentially forced proximity again that puts them together is really annoying because after season 6, when it's just sort of like, who are we gonna put Bonnie with now? Enzo and her have chemistry together. Even during his like annoying mess with Lily Salvatore, there's moments there where him and Bonnie have chemistry and they sort of make sense together. So the writing is just such a mess because it's like, it was there, like kind of, and if you squint. And the thing with Lily just brings up another point, which is that Bonnie is Enzo's third choice in partner on the show. He goes after Caroline first, and then that just dissolves into nothing, and they pretend like it never happened. And then he has a full-on, like, epic love story fling thing with Lily, and then after that falls apart and she dies, he falls in love with Bonnie. He finally has a moment somewhere in there where he's like, now wait a second. Here's a beautiful, smart, funny, incredible witch who looks an awful lot like my first love, Maggie. Look! You are actually kidding me. Like, he 100% should have been all over Bonnie from the very beginning. Forget Caroline. He should have taken one look at her and been like, oh, that's my type. But no, he doesn't pay any attention to her until season 7. That it's hard for me because there's no build up to it. I just have to be like, ah, okay, yeah, she's suddenly totally happy and in love with him. That's amazing. I want her to be totally happy and in love with him. I also want to feel like it deserved to happen. And then he still dies. Like, you're actually kidding me. What was anybody on that creative team thinking? How am I supposed to feel about that? Let's talk about Bonnie's ending as a whole, okay? On paper, the idea of Bonnie facing off against the Hellfire alone and being overwhelmed makes sense. Because on what planet can 20-something, essentially untrained, self-taught witch handle that on her own? That was never gonna work, right? That was always gonna be a martyr moment. And the fact that it's like right at the finale and it's like one last time Bonnie can kill herself to save all of us just makes me so mad. So again, on paper, the idea of all her ancestors rallying behind her and showing up to save the day with her, protecting her, as well as the rest of the town, had the chance to be really moving and powerful and just show off the coven in one last final way before we wrap up the show. But we don't know those women. We have no idea who like any of them are. It's nice to see Beatrice because it feels like, oh wow, she watched her family die from the Hellfire and now she's back protecting her final descendant from it happening again. That's really special for her. I'm glad she got to do that. And then Grams is there. Always great to see her, and of course she's protecting Bonnie. Seeing Lucy is a reminder that Bonnie never got to hang out with her again, and now she never will, because like everybody else in her family, Lucy's dead. And all the other women, we know next to nothing about. You're just suddenly throwing them on screen and going, look at how cool they could have been. Don't you wish you'd seen them before now? Wouldn't it be great if Bonnie had gotten to know them and her history and we knew more about each and every one of these amazing, awesome Bennett witches? Sorry, it's the end of the show. You're not getting any of that. But they did save the day and now the town is saved. That just sucks. And coupled with the fact that Julie Plec has tweets out there like this,
that are just gross and weird. Like, what the hell, man? It just makes it an even harder watch. Like, it feels like it's a joke or something. And like, this shouldn't be funny. I don't feel like I should need to explain that. I wish that they had found a way to like build a coven of living witches around Bonnie, even if that was just like keeping Nora and Mary Louise and letting Bonnie be friends with the two of them. Or if there could have been more done to like let Bonnie partner back up with the ancestors, because she goes into that fight with the Hellfire not thinking that they're going to come back for her. As far as she knows, the connection was broken and she can't really communicate with the spirits anymore. The other side's gone. Like, they're not there. Or I don't know, maybe we could have found a way to like have her living friends that are still there help in a meaningful way that doesn't involve Bonnie sacrificing herself. We had options, we just didn't go with any of them. After the moment with the Hellfire, when the series is like wrapping up fully, we see Bonnie wake Elena up. So she breaks the Sleeping Beauty spell that up until that point we thought could not be done. And she tells us, I guess I'm finally getting the hang of this witch thing. Girl, how? I wish I knew. I wish I'd seen you doing that. Like, how did you reverse the spell safely? What did you use to figure it out? Do you have his grimoire? What book are you using? Because that looks like your book. Did you like find the spell somewhere and then like take it apart and put it back together? Like, I want to know how you did that. I need more information. Sure wish we'd gotten to see you settle into your power on screen. That would have been really full circle, considering in the beginning of the show you were terrified of it and didn't think you wanted to be a witch. Now you got the hang of the witch thing? Oh, excellent news. It's too bad I'll never know how that happened for you. Her last moment on the show is her running off into the sunset to travel the world alone. Because yeah, her boyfriend is dead. And Elena's, you know, maybe marrying Damon and starting her life with him. And Caroline has 2 kids and is running a school with Rick. Matt's sheriff. So I guess Bonnie will just get on a plane alone. But on what planet am I supposed to feel satisfied with that? Bonnie is really a character that makes me so thankful for things like fanon. Thank God there are writers and artists and video editors out there that make things for her that give us what she deserved. I just hold those stories close to my heart because what happens to her in TBD, it's so underwhelming. And again, she is one of our main characters. Like, she is so integral to the story. The Bennetts themselves are so unbelievably important to the lore for everybody else in the show. It's just such a massive, massive fumble. Just insanely bad writing in the hands of people that clearly did not care what they were doing. And it will always make me sad because there was so much potential here. Bonnie's incredible. Even with the bad writing, even with the awful plot lines, she's amazing. I love her so much. She's one of my like top 3 favorite female characters from anything ever. Like, I adore her more than I can say. I don't know if you can tell, but the sun is gone. Like, I have been sitting here talking to you about her all freaking day, but I think we're gonna wrap it up here. If you guys enjoyed, please go ahead and like, comment something down below. Talk to me about your favorite Bennett. Who do you love from this group of amazing women? Take the title of the video and leave your own little love letter to a Bennett down below, please. That would just make my day. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you so soon. Have a good one. Bye!